The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
And welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome to the show. If you're new, we're thrilled that you found us. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about how we can be more effective and more efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. I want to let you know that there are so many different ways to be watching us now, but no matter how you watch us, this is meant to be a conversation between all of us. And we really hope, we're seeing that you're participating more in the conversation, and we only want you to do more of that because we can all benefit. So want to talk to you about some different ways that you might be watching and how you can interact with us depending on which way you're watching. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, you will see a box that says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, there is another box right next to the box from which I'm speaking, which says your questions. You don't have to log on. All you have to do is type in a question into your question, hit enter, and it will appear magically through the magic of technology right here on my screen, and you and I will be able to have a conversation in real time. And if you are watching and it says rebroadcast, or if you're watching in any of the other mediums that were available, then you have the opportunity to email your question. And I know it's not quite the instant gratification that we've all come to know and love, but I'll tell you what's great about emailing in. Not only will we answer your question live on the next show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response. So you'll get that really quick answer, and everyone else will get the benefit from it as well. I always say that no matter where you are, if it's day one for you, your child was just diagnosed, even before that, if you're starting to think, hey, maybe I need to look into this, or if you have been working with your child on the spectrum for a decade, no matter where you are, you have something to add to somebody else. Even asking a question, I know in the beginning, I used to say, I don't even know what question to ask. And I listened to other parents, and then I began to know which questions to ask. So there is no wrong question, right? And there, you know what they say, there is no stupid question either. So we welcome all of your questions, all of your comments, any ideas you have for a segment that you'd like to see, a topic you want to see more of. We're happy to hear all of that. So let's talk about all the different ways you could be watching us, though. Again, autism-live.com is one way that you can be watching us, and that's a great way to tune into the live show. We're live 9 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday, Pacific Standard Time. But you can also be watching us on Blip TV, and this is a great way to watch if you want to be able to fast forward, rewind. The live thing is wonderful, but sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm really DVR happy, and I like to say, what did they just say, and go back over something. All of our episodes now are being archived on Blip, and you can tune in there and be able to fast forward through things that you've seen or heard or not as interested in, don't apply to you or your child, and skip to the stuff that you do want to see. So that's one way to watch. Of course, we are also on YouTube. There's a specific channel on YouTube that is just for Autism Live, and we tend to put shorter clips there that very specific things, sort of highlights of the different shows. So you can tune in there, see the expert interviews or different topics that we're highlighting on YouTube. Lots of other ways that you can watch us. You can watch us on iTunes. You can even subscribe to us on iTunes. And by the way, if you see us on iTunes, and you're up to it, we appreciate reviews all the time. So give us a review on iTunes. We will greatly appreciate it. I also want to let you know that you can get a hold of us through Facebook, that we are on Autism Live on Facebook. We appreciate your likes there. We're brand spanking new on Facebook. So we're just a baby and growing our likes, but we appreciate likes there. And you can answer the question of the day there. A wonderful thing to do. We love your responses. We love interacting with you. And I'm trying to think what else that we have. Oh, Twitter. Of course, you can tweet. Yes, tweeting. I'm getting better at the tweet thing. It was not my thing before, but I'm learning how to tweet and getting all that together. So you'll see more and more topics there that we'll be tweeting about on the Twitter. Okay, so those are all the different ways that you can get a hold of us, and more coming. We're trying to find a way that we can reach absolutely all of you that's easy, because we want the information to be free and easy to access. And I know that you have different schedules, different things that are going on in your life. So all of us here at Autism Live are trying to figure out all the different pathways that you might, and if there's something that you have not seen yet that you know you want, please let us know. I mentioned that we're going to be talking about how we can be more efficient and more effective working with our kids on the autism spectrum. We talk a lot about ABA, applied behavior analysis, and the reason for that is because it is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. So we're going to talk about that a lot because it's a broad subject with lots of different things to talk about, but all of them really exciting. I have to tell you, if you're in a place today where your child's engaging in some challenging behavior, or there's something that you wish your child could do. And as a former teacher, I know when my child was diagnosed, there was a moment in time when I looked at him and we had tried a whole bunch of different things that weren't working, and the thought crossed my mind, maybe he's unteachable. I have to tell you, I think that was the darkest moment, even more than getting the diagnosis. But thinking that there was a possibility that my child was unteachable was just devastating, cut me right to the core. And I'm happy to tell you that it wasn't true, and that it's not true of your child either. We have seen through the studies with ABA that it is effective in reaching all of our kids and having them make progress. They're not all going to end up in the same place because they didn't all start in the same place, and they're not all working with the same set of circumstances, right? Our kids, there are no two of our children that are alike. And I don't want to at all suggest that this is easy, but this is the way to true progress. And we certainly experienced that. My son was diagnosed with autism, classic autism, at 2.5. And at that point, he had the kind of autism that was regressive. He had lost virtually all of his skills. He wasn't speaking. There was no functional communication left. He was not responding to his name. I thought he was deaf. Severe challenging behavior, including violence and self-injurious behavior. And I'm happy to tell you that my child's 8.5. He's going to completely neurotypical 3rd grade, went to kindergarten on time at grade level, which I was told was not going to happen, but it did, because he had ABA. He had really quality ABA from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So if I seem like a huge fan of CARD, that's why, because I got my child back with their quality ABA therapy. Now, CARD is by no means the only ABA provider in the world, and they're by no means the only quality ABA provider in the world, but I will speak fondly of them because that's where I got my child back. And I know the people here now, and I always like to say I'm absolutely humbled. For so long, when my child was diagnosed, I was walking through the world thinking that I was completely alone, that I would picture myself having to put on, all the battlement, the armor to go into battle to fight for my child, because I was the only one who was going to do that. And what I learned here at CARD as a client was that there were people here who genuinely cared about my child, who genuinely knew that they could help us and help him, and they did. And now that I work here with this group of people on a daily basis, I'm humbled to see how much they care. I had no idea. I was saying the other day, it's not unusual at all to walk down the hallway and hear somebody saying, you know, I was thinking about it last night and I was doing the dishes and I was thinking, this is how we're going to be able to help this family, or this is how we're going to help this particular group that hasn't been helped, or here's the way we're going to be able to provide services in an easier way. I hear those conversations in the hallway all the time. And I share that with you because I want you to know that there are good, talented, passionate people working in the world trying to help our kids. And I have been granted access to a great many of them. And I've been granted that access on your behalf. So please take advantage of it. Friend me on Facebook. Talk to me here. Tell me your questions, your concerns, your suggestions, your complaints, your fears, whatever it is, and let's work through it. I am not an expert. I am not an expert on ABA. I'm not an expert on behavior. I'm not an expert on autism. But I'm an expert in my kid most of the time, not all the time, because he changes, you know. But and I have the hope and the connections to help as many of you that are as willing to take advantage of it. So come on down, participate. Okay, we like to start every single morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. If you're new on this journey, the jargon can really put a crimp in your day. You're wanting help and support from experts and you're asking them questions about your child and they come back with a bunch of words that they might as well be Greek, right? But we can make friends with the jargon. We can tackle this. And if we're smart about this, we'll do the same thing that we do with our kids. Take a huge task and break it down into little increments that are palatable, that we can do just a little bit at a time, right? So we give you one word, one phrase, or one anagram a day and try to demystify it. I like to make fun of the actual definitions. So we give you the phrase or the word, whatever it is, give you an actual definition, which is sometimes even more jargon intensive. And then we give you a more user-friendly definition. So let's take a look. Today's phrase is receptive language. And this is a great jargon phrase because it's going to come up over and over and over again with your child. And we've had this word before, but I think it's important to go over them from time to time, especially the ones that are more frequently used, partially so that when the new viewers come in that they're getting these words, but I think it's important for all of us to go over them from time to time. And since it is IEP season, if you're being asked to do an IEP with your child at school, you know you're going to hear about receptive language, right? Okay. So receptive language, our actual definition is the process of attending to communication, spoken or non-vocal, comprehending the communication, and being able to react appropriately within a specified time parameter, even when what is being conveyed contains multiple facets. Okay, as definitions go, it's not the worst one because it's not very jargon intensive. However, you know, we can make this a little bit easier. So our working definition for receptive language is the child's ability to understand what's being said to them. What you're going to hear endlessly is your child's receptive language and their expressive language. I like to think of it express. When you express yourself, it goes that way, right? So your child's ability to express themselves is going to be their expressive language. But receptive language is stuff that goes this way. So if you're saying to a child, get your shoes, and the child has no receptive language abilities, then you might as well have said blah, 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 right? Because they have no idea what you said. And I was mentioning earlier that there was a period of time in which I thought my child might be deaf or going deaf because there was no response. We would say his name, he would not turn. But what we discovered very quickly after my son was diagnosed and being tested was that his receptive language was almost nil. I literally might as well have been speaking another language. He didn't understand it. And we'll talk throughout the day and throughout the week about how we can help to build receptive language skills. But one of the best pieces of advice that I have gotten doing this show that I try to remind myself on a daily basis, and this is with anything, but we have Evelyn Gould, who's a fabulous BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, who comes in every Wednesday at 10 o'clock to talk to us about parent-friendly things that we can do. And And one of the things that Evelyn said a couple of months ago was make sure that when you are first starting out working on receptive or first starting working out on any kind of new skill, that you keep your words to a minimum. And the example that she was using was that if I were to go to, let's say, Russia, and I don't speak more than Das Vidanya in Russian, if I go to Russia and I'm staying at somebody's house, and let's say that I'm upstairs in the bedroom, and somebody from the house comes upstairs to the bedroom to me and starts saying a whole slew of Russian words to me, and I have absolutely no idea what they're saying whatsoever. I have no clue. I'm watching for gestures. I'm thinking it's got to be something to do in the bedroom because that's where we are. That would be the logical way that I would be thinking about things. I'm not going to pick up the Russian language if they're just saying sentence upon sentence. Whereas, if the person were to come upstairs, take my hand, take me downstairs to the dining room, and point to a bowl of soup and gesture to the chair and hand me the spoon, and then they say a word, I'm going to begin to understand that that word is eat in Russian. But I can't pick it out of a sea of words, right? Well, it's the same thing with our children. If we can pare it down and be as specific as possible, and we do want to be gesturing in the beginning, but very few words that we want to use, be in the right place where the object is in front of us if we're trying to work on labeling, or if it's an action that we want them to do, that we're participating in the action, but keeping the words to a minimum. That's how we would want to pick up a language, and we're asking our children to pick up the language that we're speaking. In my case, it would be English. So keeping it really succinct in the right location, hopefully with something that I can gesture to point to, but only using a minimum of words. Hopefully we can get it down to one word. We're going to be talking a lot about manding today, which, yes, is expressive language, but we'll talk about getting it succinct to that one word. So really important that in the beginning, I'm a woman of many words. Let's say that. Who else could sit here and talk endlessly for 3 hours? So it's one of the hardest things for me. But what we find is that when we keep those words to a minimum, say one word at a time, we're going to be more effective and our kids are going to learn quicker. So it is something that we can control and work on. Okay, so receptive language, again, is what your child hears and understands. Really important, and a lot of times you're going to see your child's expressive language and receptive languages on different levels. They're not always the same. You could have a child who has virtually no receptive language skills and high expressive. Well, that's great that we have high expressive, but you're going to see that there are going to be problems that result if you have high expressive and low receptive. This is going to be that child that in the classroom does fairly okay, but when the teacher gives a direction, the child isn't doing it, and they will start to engage in challenging behavior because they're not understanding. And it can be the exact opposite too, that a child can have really high receptive with almost no expressive. Haven't we seen that in the news a lot? The child who everybody says has no language skills, and then suddenly they're 14 and somebody sticks the computer in front of them and the child types out and says, "Hey, you guys, I have been here the entire time, heard everything you said, and by the way, can somebody get me a peanut butter sandwich?" And everybody goes, "Oh my goodness," because the child had huge receptive, but very little ability to express themselves until they're given a medium. It's really important that we get our kids tested, that we know on a yearly basis where they are so that we can be working to strengthen the one that's strong and shore up and build the one where there's the bigger deficit. Okay, we also always have for you a question of the day. Question of the day is meant to get you thinking, get you talking, get you participating. You're always welcome to tweet into us, to write in, email, or put it in your question box. But a lot of you have taken to answering this on Facebook. We love that because then you have the opportunity to talk to each other throughout the day about the things that you've written. Today's question is, what do you wish your child could say to you? And I know it's a power-packed emotional question, right? And our kids are in all different places, and so their ability to express themselves is vastly different. So for those of you who have nonverbal children, it's going to be vastly different than those who have kids on the Asperger end of things, that they're very expressive, but not always social language expressive. So I'm really interested to hear, what do you wish that your child could say to you? And I have to say that, you know, if this were 5 years ago, my answer would have been so very different from what it is now, because I used to, on a daily basis, you guys, pray and hope for a day when my son could tell me what he was feeling. Oh, I wanted that so bad. And I wanted to know what he was thinking and what he thought about things, how his view of the world. And I was so worried that I was never, ever going to get that opportunity. And I'm so grateful and lucky that, and of course, he worked really hard too. I don't mean to make it sound like it's all luck. He put in the time. But we talk about those things now. And so it's a much different thing for me right now. But what I wish my child could say to me, you know, there's still some emotional things and some things that he thinks that are still very private, but there's a part of me that thinks that that's okay, that I want him to have some private stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what I would wish anymore, but that's a really good place to be in, and I wish that for all of you. And I'm really excited to hear what you wish that your child could say to you, because we know that their progress can be made. So stay tuned. Okay, we also always have a topic of the day. The topic of the day is the thing that will filter. I mean, you could probably guess already what our topic for today is, because we've already been talking about these things, but it's teaching language. How do we teach language in the many myriads of different ways that we need to teach language for kids to be able to truly understand it? We're not trying to create kids that just parrot something and say the same phrase over and over and over again, right? We need for them to understand language, figurative language, and we need for them to understand that the way that you say something has so many different ramifications. That understanding, for instance, red, we want them to be able to label red, but we want them to receptively be able to understand red. We want them to understand that there's different degrees of red, and that red can be figurative, that somebody can say, oh, you know, somebody's was red hot with anger, right? So there's so much to be worked on with language. But one of the things that I love, you know, my son graduated from his ABA program almost a year ago. We're coming up on the year mark, but we still do skills at home. And I encourage all of you within the sound of my voice to be using skills to be able to build these kinds of things in your children, because all the lessons are there. You don't have to guess. That you're not thinking, oh, did I leave something out? It's all there at the curriculum, tried and true, been researched. It's the same lessons that my child was working on, and it's amazing. A wonderful, wonderful tool. So we're going to talk about teaching language and give you some tips about how to teach language, but I really encourage you to use skills. Okay, and our schedule for today, some of the different things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about stress, how we can help to reduce our own stress, because we know that's a part of this journey. There's no escaping it, right? We are going to be stressed. So how do we manage it so that we can get back to the business of helping our kids and helping our families? We'll talk about funding, because that's a huge part of the stress. So we're going to give you some helpful tips about finding funding to be able to fund the journey, right? And we'll also hit a myth of the day. You know me, I get so crazy about the myths surrounding autism and ABA. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well as a whole host of other things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about DTT and NET today. And if you don't know what that is, you've come to the right place, because we're going to help you to figure that out. It's all good, and we appreciate your thoughts, your comments, your suggestions, and your questions. We're going to take a break. Now's a great time to write in and answer the question of the day, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And we said that we were going to talk a little bit about stress today. So we're just going to give you one quick tip for dealing with stress, because we know that we all are going to experience stress, right? It's IEP season. I've got an IEP coming up, and you just can feel the stress. And it doesn't matter how many times you've done it, the stress goes, ooh, right? It could be any one of 1,000 other things too. It's not just IEPs. This is a stressful journey. So if we can understand that, and there are lots of people that have stress in their lives, but it becomes a question of how are we going to manage it? And I feel a little bit like, it's one of those things about, are you walking the talk? Because I do not walk the talk enough. So please understand that I'm giving you suggestions of how to help deal with the stress, but I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm just keeping it real, keeping it honest here. But there's one thing that we can all do, right? Because sometimes it comes down to what can you afford, but this is something that we all get to do minute by minute, and that's breathe. We have to remember to breathe. And there are lots of different things that we can do to breathe, but some really good advice that I heard on Oprah, and I love my Oprah, miss my Oprah, but there was a monk who was on, Norman the monk, and he talked about the power of 3 breaths. And this came at a time when I so very desperately needed it because my stress level was so high. And he said that it doesn't matter where you are or what's happening, but 3 breaths can always make it better. And it became one of those things that ate at the back of my head where I was thinking, is that really true? So I've tried it in a wide variety of circumstances, and I think he's right. And I put it to you to try for yourself and write into us and tell us if Norman the monk is correct. But the idea that 3 very slow inhales and 3 very slow exhales, 3 in a row, that whatever is happening, if you take the time to do 3, and I do think it needs to be 3, very slow inhale, very slow exhale, whatever's going on will be just that ever so slightly much better after the 3 breaths, because your brain gets clearer, you're able to think and be more productive. Sometimes we hold our breath. If you've noticed, when you get stressed, everything kind of raises up and we hold our breath. And what happens that I used to think, it's that chicken and the egg, which comes first. I used to think that we get stressed and then we hold our breath. And, many people have said to me, many yoga teachers have now said to me, no, it's kind of the opposite, that you hold your breath and that sends a signal to your brain saying, we're not getting any oxygen, it's time to panic. So if we take the time to center those 3 breaths, and it takes a minute to be able to do the 3 slow inhale, 3 slow exhales, things can get better. So wherever you are, whatever's going on, taking those 3 solid breaths. Now, once you see the benefit of that, if you become more interested in breathing on a regular basis, of course, there's meditation and yoga and things like that that are really breath-centric. And I know you're thinking, oh, I don't have the time. I got to be at speech. I got to be at OT. My child is having a meltdown. I know, but even if it's that you find 60 seconds, and there are meditations that you can download online, go on iTunes, they're free, or go online, there are places that have a daily meditation that if you listen for a minute, it's better than not doing it for a minute. And I think we can all find 1 minute a day. I know some days it seems like, when is that going to be possible? But you probably can find 1 minute a day. And if it means, I remember when we were in the thick of things with autism, it would be after I'd finally gotten my child to sleep, which was really difficult. And then I would lay down in the bed and I would think, I've got to meditate. And I would try to meditate for 30 seconds and I would be asleep. But you know what? Taking that 30 seconds to meditate is what made it possible for me to sleep. So make it a part of your day, even if it's just 3 breaths. But if you have time to do something like yoga or meditation, absolutely wonderful. And another thing that somebody was teaching me recently is being able to do 4 inhales and using your fingers. So you breathe in and 4 and then out 4. That it's through your nose and out, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, that it can really center you. It kind of wakes you up, clears the sinuses. We all need our sinuses cleared at this time of the year, right? And just a few minutes of that can kind of wake you up, get you very alert, because a lot of you I know are functioning on too little sleep and too much stress. So getting the centered breaths and doing the 4 it's hard for me to do. But because I'm not coordinated, but you're probably better than I am. Breathing in and breathing out to get you really centered, motivated, awake. The breath is important. And even starting to notice when throughout the day that you're holding your breath, right? And if you're sore in your shoulders and in your neck, it's probably because there's a measure of holding your breath going on. Not good. Not good for us. And I've shared before that when my son was little, one of his favorite things was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender on Nickelodeon. And, I'm not a fan of all children's programming. In fact, I'm a fan of very little of it. But I have to say that he and I loved watching this program together, and I really enjoyed the things that were taught in this show. And the main character of it was a little boy who meditated on a regular basis. And it's a funny show too, right? The kids love it. I loved it as an adult, but he would sit there and meditate, and people would come along and be talking to him and he'd say, I'm meditating. Really sweet, wonderful little hero. And so I was able through that show to say to my son, because I had no time to meditate, right? But I was able to say to him, let's be like Aang and let's sit here and meditate together. And so my little munchkin would sit there with his hands together. Actually, I think Aang does it this way. And we would sit and meditate together. Now, they run Avatar: The Last Airbender in reruns on Nickelodeon. And so if you want to introduce the idea of meditating with your child, it might be a good thing to do. And just this last weekend, they started the new series, The Legend of Korra. It was very exciting in my house, I can tell you. But we're not seeing that Korra meditates. Korra needs to learn to meditate. So we'll see what happens with that. But my point is, not only do we need to do this for ourselves, but we know that stress and anxiety and even panic attacks can sometimes go hand in hand with autism as children grow. And what a great thing to be able to model now for our children, that slow inhale of breath and exhale of breath, and being able to sit and be focused and focus on your breathing. What a fabulous thing to share with our children now. Okay, we're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope. they're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're going to take a moment to talk a little bit about autism in the classroom and how we can set our kids up for success. Isn't that one of the most important things that we have on our agenda today? We want to set our kids up for success whenever possible. And I know that it can be really hard sometimes sending our kids off to school, that we hope that the people who are working there are as passionate about working with our kids and about learning techniques to be able to help our kids. We see it a lot of times that those individuals are there, and other times you're not sure. You see people who are used to doing things a certain way. It can be really rough. But today's tip is going to help you no matter what's going on in the classroom, right? And that's a good thing. You know, I say all the time with ABA that as a parent, my experience of it is that sometimes through the years that my son was getting ABA, somebody would suggest an intervention, and I would call it the duh interventions, things that hadn't occurred to me, but once somebody says, hey, try it this way, and you go, well, duh, that makes sense. And today is a duh moment, right? But honestly, I don't think it occurs to a lot of us that when you're starting out the school year, as you start a relationship with a new teacher, and usually I ask to go in and meet with a teacher a couple of weeks before school starts, and I've been in communication with the teacher even before that, as soon as I can possibly get them to assign a teacher to my son. But I like to provide them with resources and information, and have the opportunity to bring my child into their classroom, hear a little little bit about how their rules are structured so that I can start to work on some stuff at home with my child before the first day of school. So for instance, if you have a child who's going to kindergarten and the teacher says, well, we do 20-minute centers and we're on a really tight schedule and every 20 minutes we rotate, then you have the opportunity to spend the whole summer getting your child's little body used to 20-minute segments. So you know that instead before you were doing 35 minutes or you were doing an hour. Well, we're going to paint right now for an hour, and instead you can switch to 20-minute segments and be giving them a 5-minute warning before the 20-minute comes so that your child is used to the format. And sometimes for some of our kids that can make such a huge difference. So asking those kinds of questions of the teacher and saying, you know, what are your core rules? If it's a really good teacher, and I'm going to hope for you that it is a really good teacher, then they probably have at least 5 core rules of how their classroom runs. And ask them, you know, what's a typical schedule? What kinds of breaks? Now, the older the child gets, the less regimented it might be. Different teachers, different things. But for instance, for one teacher, if they want everybody to be silent, this might be the symbol, right? So that's one of those core rules that you want to know so that you can start teaching your child that during the summer. So when they show up on the first day and people are doing this, we're not expecting them to learn this skill on top of all the sensory other stuff that's going on. I know a teacher that, I'm still trying to figure it out, but there's, you know, this is for quiet, and this is for I have to go to the bathroom because I think it's the crossed legs, and this is for I need a drink of water. You know, it's overwhelming to me. And I'm an adult who does not have, well, not diagnosed anywhere on the spectrum anyway. So imagine for a child coming in, how much easier things are going to function for them if they already know the language of what's being spoken in the classroom and what the expectations are and what the rules are. But this can extend into other things as well. That I like to be a little bit ahead of the curve and asking the teachers, what kinds of things are we going to be going over in this quarter? So that if I have the opportunity to get there ahead of things. I've shared before that in kindergarten, we had the best kindergarten teacher in the world. I'm sorry, I know you probably have a great kindergarten teacher, but really, we had the best kindergarten teacher in the world. And I hope that you want to argue with me. I hope that's your wish, that you have such a good kindergarten teacher. But in any case, I could say to her, what's coming up, like 2 and 3 months down the road? And in particular, I remember her saying to me, we're going to be dealing with money in February. And, you know, if he has a really good grasp on the money to start, then we're going to see him learn more. Great teacher. So we started in November, starting to work in really fun ways, making money really fun so that he knew what a penny was, he knew what a nickel was, he knew what a dime was, knew what a quarter was, and we could work on it really slowly so that by the day that they started working on money in the classroom, he already found it really reinforcing and was excited, and there was not even a moment where he felt like he was a little bit behind. We'd want to minimize, especially with a child who is fairly young or is struggling or just starting ABA, we want to be able to work on some core skills in a really safe environment that we know we can reinforce it. It's hard in a classroom to learn something new if you've been struggling with some of the things that come with autism, right? It's a new environment. There's a lot going on in a classroom. Imagine if I was going to explain quantum physics to you and I put you in the middle of a carnival and said, okay, now get out a piece of paper and I'm going to start to explain it to you here. It would be much more difficult than if I could explain quantum physics to you in a very quiet room with appropriate lighting with no distractions, right? I can't explain quantum physics to you, but supposing that I could. In any case, everything to our beginning children is going to seem like quantum physics. So why not give them the quiet environment to introduce it and make it reinforcing so that they can take those skills and use them in the classroom? I think that most teachers, you know, if you have older kids, you get to the end of the year, and I always like to say, what are the things that we're going to hit the big subjects that we're going to hit next year? My son's in 3rd grade this year, and we were told last year that the multiplication tables was the big thing that was going to happen in 3rd grade, and that the other thing was cursive handwriting, but they asked us please not to work on the cursive handwriting at home. It very nearly killed me all summer, but we called it the summer of the multiplication tables, that we worked and drilled and made it as reinforcing as we possibly could so that he could be in a place where he was never behind for the multiplication tables. I did not ask about long division. Wished I'd asked about. Sometimes you don't know the question to ask, right? But I know already, having talked to some people, that in 4th grade it's really going to be a lot about creative writing, that they get, in our school, they get little netbooks. And so there's going to be a lot of typing. So this summer, that's what we're going to be working on, typing skills and writing, giving him a prompt and having him write about something and really getting I'm excited because I think for him to be able to write on the keyboard is going to be thrilling for him. A computer is much more reinforcing to him than a piece of paper and a pen, like so many of our kids today. But in any case, asking what it is that's going to be worked on, what skills, and then working on them at home in that very safe environment where you have the opportunity to reinforce on a regular basis. I know it's a duh, but it doesn't always occur to us. So hopefully, as we get to the end of this year and start to transition into the summer, we can all be asking those questions and have a really productive summer. Let me know how it works for you. Okay, let's take a break, and we're going to be back in just a few minutes. And then stay tuned, because at the top of the hour, we're going to show you the A word, so stick with us.
The Autism Society exists to improve the lives of all affected by autism. We work to increase public awareness about the day-to-day issues faced by people on the spectrum, advocate for appropriate services for individuals across their lifespan, and provide the latest information regarding treatment, education, research, and advocacy. For more information, visit www.autismsociety.org.
Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. And all day today, we're talking about teaching language. And we're going to be hitting some very specific topics about teaching language. But I just want to take a minute to say a couple of words about reinforcement, since we were talking about how we want to make things reinforcing in the classroom. Whenever we're teaching language, we want to make sure that it's reinforcing. And what I mean by that, we know that the basic principle of ABA that we want to follow all the time is that in order for any behavior to be maintained, any behavior that we want to see happen again and again and again, it has to be reinforcing. And if you think about your life and the things that you do on a regular basis, the things that are a regular habit, probably most of you who are watching me, you speak on a regular basis. Why? Why are you speaking on a regular basis? Because it is reinforcing to you, and some of us speak more than others, right? But the way we learned how to speak, and the way that a typically developing child will learn how to speak is that when they start to see that when I speak and I ask for this, I'm much more likely to get it, and it's quicker and faster than a tantrum. Really, it's that simple. It comes down to that. And we see time and time again that when we give children functional communication skills, they will prefer to communicate rather than engaging in challenging behavior. Okay, so let's go back over that for 1 second. If you've got a child who's engaging in challenging behavior, they're throwing tantrums, they're having meltdowns, or that child who just seems completely out of sorts, right? It can be so frustrating, so maddening. But what we see time and time again is that frequently, if not most of the time, it is a level of frustration because they have no other way of getting their needs met. It's not efficient. I think that's what always is the stumbling block for us when we're thinking about it and thinking, well, but the tantrum isn't efficient. No, it isn't. But if you have no other way of getting your needs met, then you would resort to that, right? I always like to say, if an alien ship picked us up and we got taken to another planet where we didn't speak the language, which didn't understand the gestures. Their fingers and their faces were different, and we just didn't understand what their gestures were, how long would it be before you would throw a tantrum? I would be throwing a tantrum fairly quickly. It would only take until I needed a drink or to go to the bathroom, and I would try to communicate with these beings, but if they weren't getting it and they weren't letting me use a restroom or getting me something to drink, I would start kicking people to get attention. Right? And so, of course, we're going to see that from even a neurotypical 2-year-old. They call them the terrible twos, right? Well, it's at a time when children are starting to understand, I have needs and I want them to be met. And I cried for a year and a half, and when I would cry, you would do something. So I am going to create tears somewhere. It might be my own, it might be yours, but for a year and a half, I would cry and you would pick me up, you would change my diaper, you would feed me, you would hold me, you would pay attention to me. So that's what I know works. I'm going to keep pressing that. And we have that horrible period of time, even with a typically developing child in those terrible twos where they haven't quite got the language skills and they're still relying on this challenging behavior. Well, they start to see, okay, well, if I say this, I get the cookie that much faster. If I do this, then I get mom's attention this much faster. That's a typically developing child. And so the tantrums start to go away because it's much quicker to say cookie than it is to fling yourself on the floor and throw a tantrum, or a hissy as we call them in my family. So what happens for the child who doesn't have the means to verbalize and say cookie? You're going to stick to what worked, right? Even if it's not working as well, even if it's not as efficient, you're going to throw those tantrums. So what we will see over time is that a child who gains functional communication skills, and we know we can teach this to our kids on the spectrum, even if they are profoundly affected on the spectrum, we can teach functional communication skills. And when that happens, we will see that challenging behavior decrease dramatically. It works. You can see, I call it the magic X on graphs that they'll graph behavior. We see that when a child's ability to request things goes up, their challenging behavior goes down, and they literally cross like an X. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And whenever I see that X on a graph, I know that a child is making tremendous progress. And more than that, it symbolizes that there's hope in that household. If you're somebody who is dealing with really incredible, challenging behavior, and you're at the end of your rope, I really want to encourage you to get a BCBA who is not just any BCBA, right? Somebody who's experienced in autism and who is experienced in challenging behavior. And I'll tell you, one of the first things that they're going to do is help you to gain functional communication skills with your child. And once that happens, it's amazing what else can happen from there. But I know you're sitting there going, I can't teach my child how to speak because my child is banging his head against the kitchen floor. I got to tell you that a lot of times these things can be solved together. But you got to be working with somebody who understands and who gets it. A BCBA, board certified behavior analyst, who has experience in autism and has experience with the challenging behavior that you're running up against. So if your kid is hitting his head against the refrigerator, you're going to call up BCBAs and say, do you have experience with autism, and do you have experience with hitting their head against something solid? And if they say yes, it's somebody to start with. I also want to say, the universe asks me to walk my talk all the time, and I've shared on the show before that we have a new dog. Did you see? I had to take a breath. And we adopted this wonderful, wonderful dog from a shelter who had many times over was supposed to be put down because nobody had claimed this dog. And we adopted her and had a wonderful, I think, whole 4 days with this dog, and things were fabulous. And then some stuff happened and we went into challenging behavior land. And I've shared before on the show that it really was one of those things. I was like, okay, well, my dog is doing something and I need to remember that it's behavior, and behavior is communication. And we talk about this all the time, that this is some bad behavior. It's kind of some scary behavior, but that's what it is, it's behavior. But one of the things that I tell you guys all the time is don't just accept it and don't just give up. You've got to get a professional in there. You've got to get some help. And you know, and I always say that, and in my best moment, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to go and you're going to get some help. And my hope is that the first person you talk to is going to be helpful. I don't know why I, you know, would assume that that is the case, because for so many of us, that's not the case. That the first person that you go and ask for some help is often not going to get it done. If you're lucky, and they are somebody who can get it done, that's wonderful. But I was totally reminded in the last couple of weeks, we called in a dog trainer because I said, well, I say all the time, don't try to do things that you can't do, get an expert in. So let's get a dog trainer in, somebody who understands dog behavior. This is not rocket science, it's dog behavior. Let's get somebody who knows how to deal with these things in. And had somebody come to the house, and she said, I can't work with your dog until your dog's behavior stops. And I turned to my husband and I said, oh, this so reminds me of autism. That, you know, you have a child who's engaging in challenging behavior and you call an expert to come in and they say, oh, we can't work with a child until the child stops the challenging behavior. I want you to know that that happens sometimes. And it happened with my dog trainer, which reminded me that this happens in autism. You know what it is? It's one of those things where you go, oh, clearly you're not the person. Because if you can't work through the challenging behavior, you're not the person. I know it sets up that moment where you go, oh, is there anybody? There are people. There are people who are going to be able to work with my dog. I just haven't found them yet. I'm looking. And I want you to know that there are people who are trained and can deal with your child's challenging behavior. And those people can get it turned around really quickly. Sometimes in a day or 2 days or a week. Imagine how much different your life would be in a week if you got that challenging behavior under control. So I feel compelled to say that it's not always going to be the first person you find. And don't be discouraged by that. That's like one of those check marks you go, oh, clearly you are not the person. But the person is out there. Please remove yourself from my site. I'm going to find the person. And the person is out there. And of course, if you're looking, I encourage you to go to Center for Autism and Related Disorders first, www.centerforautism, see if they're close by, because I know that they can get it done. There are other people who can too, but CARD is in more places in the world than anybody else, so start there and see if they're close by. If they are, woohoo! If they're not, then, you know, there are other people, but it's possible. It's not only possible, it happens on a daily basis. People work with children and turn challenging behavior around. And they will also give your child functional communication skills. It's a wonderful thing. Okay, it's time for me to introduce the A Word. This is a wonderful documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders about a fabulous little boy who was diagnosed with autism while he was still 2, started treatment at about 2.5. In the series that, the place where we're watching, he's about to be 3, I believe. His name is Jack Riley, and he is making tremendous progress. He's not done, because we know that ABA takes quite a bit of a time commitment, but he is making tremendous progress. He is gaining functional communication skills and finding it easier to communicate than to throw a tantrum. So his challenging behavior is decreasing, not gone away, and we're going to see it springs up in different ways as we start to work on different things. But let's check in and see what Jack Riley is up to this week. This is the A Word.
Jack Riley starts his day with Jessica and AB therapy at 8 a.m. Each session he has lasts around 2 hours, with a total amount of therapy of 40 hours per week. This includes occupational therapy, speech therapy, and ABA therapy.
What do you want to play with today? Train. That's what I thought. Yay, there you go. There's trains and tracks. Nice.
So what's an average of programs you try to get done in a session with a kid?
I try to incorporate a lot of things as much as I can. Like, for instance, if he was playing with trains, I'd incorporate functional pretend play. So that's just basically teaching him how to play with the toy appropriately, the way it's supposed to be played, building a track and having him move, and using vocalizations. Choo-choo, let's go, all aboard, things like that. Choo-choo. All right, say all aboard. All aboard. All right. Because he's so little, we're building a lot of language. It's language, 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 all the time. So we work on banding, so having him request for things for me. We can also work on tacting, which is having him label, like the colors, the names of the trains. That's the twist. It's Thomas. It's Thomas. Also, we can work on getting attention. I would withhold the preferred trains or tracks and have him tap my shoulder to get more pieces. He wants to go. Hi, what do you want? You want trains. We can also work on compliance, like come here and give it to me. Wait. Come here. Good job, mister. So there's a lot of things I can kind of incorporate, at the same time in one sitting. And as far as his behaviors, I haven't really seen anything. Hey, sit up. Well, just now. Yeah, with his visual stereotypy, his is just looking at things from a different angle or sideways or upside down. But he rarely engages in that except just now.
What?
Pickers.
Huh?
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I'm filming you.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, bye.
Who is that?
Jack.
Jack? Jack who?
Jack Riley.
Where's your nose? Where's your ears? Where's your eyes? Where's your chin? Ooh.
Where's your teeth? Is that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your head? Where's your tummy? Okay, I'm gonna need you now. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a hat? Clothes. Clothes! Oh my goodness, you're so smart.
Jessica and Jack Riley are continuing to work on categories.
Give me vehicle. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Give me a vehicle. Nice. What's a fire truck? Fire truck. What is that? Vehicle. It's a vehicle. Cool. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a dress? Clothes. Clothes. Nice. Here you go. Here's your sticker. Give me furniture. Nice job. What's a table? Furniture. Furniture. Perfect. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a jacket? What's a jacket? No, what's a jacket? No. Hey, hey. What's a jacket? No, what's a jacket? It's It's jacket. What is it? It's clothes. It's clothes. So what's a jacket? Clothes. Clothes. Good job. Here, put Tigger on. Yeah, you're all done. You want your trains or bed? Trains. Okay, go play with your train. See you later.
Welcome back. That was the A word. I just love this. I know I say that after we watch everything, but I get so excited watching it because I'm so thrilled on so many different fronts. I'm thrilled that you have the opportunity, and by the way, there's the YouTube channel if you want to be watching it from the beginning, and you can watch ahead. We're months behind in terms of how we're covering it here on the show, because I like to take one episode and watch it over and over and over again, once a day, and talk about different things, because there's so many different aspects of it to talk about. But I love from different episodes you'll watch, and they'll focus on the parents and what it's like for the parents, having these total strangers come into your house 40 hours a week and work with your children, and what that's like, because it's weird. It's definitely, it changes your life. I always say it's like picking up your house, shaking it, and leaving it upside down. Worth it, but it is emotional and it's stressful having a whole bunch of strangers in your house to work on these things with your child. But I also think that it's a great way for us to learn more about working ABA, and to really see the through line of how a child starts on a little skill, and it seems like it's really exciting. Okay, the child can say this word, but how do we get from saying that word to being able to participate in a conversation? Ooh, long distance from here to here that we take for granted in typical children, that they're just going to figure it out, right? And our kids don't just figure it out, but we can help them to get from point A to point Z, and the progression of how it's done is absolutely fascinating, and you're starting to see that unfold with Jack Riley. So I love that, and it gives us tips and suggestions, and I think for a lot of you watching, I don't want to suppose for you, but I know for me, when we were going through ABA with my child, and because I'd never done it before, I continued to stress along the way, even though they would tell me and I would read books and hear about, but I'm a very visual person, so I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the big picture. And for those of us that are like that, the A word is a wonderful gift, because we can see the big picture with somebody else's child, where while we're still emotionally involved, it's different than seeing it with our own child, right? It's a little bit easier when it's a little bit removed, and to see that this little boy is progressing, and he's happy, and he's learning, and he is excited to learn. What a wonderful gift to be able to give our children. And that's not coincidental, by the way, and that is not solely Jack Riley. He's a very sunny little boy, right? But he has his moments, and if you watch the series, you'll see that he has his moments, and he cries, and he'll even whine, and he's unhappy, right? He's not just Mr. Happy-go-lucky all of the time. But if we're really doing ABA and doing quality ABA therapy, and holding on to that tenet that in order for something to be in order for something to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing, then therapy should be a lot of fun for our kids. We don't want it to be adversarial. It's going to be adversarial from time to time, because when we're asking a child to give up something that's worked for them in the past, they're not going to want to the first time we ask them, or the second time that we ask them. There's a really early episode of the A Word where Jack Riley is laying on his side, like he does in this episode, and he's looking at the wheels of the train. We know that our kids tend to be really fascinated by how things work and how wheels work, and they want to lay down to play with their toys. And in one of the early episodes, Jessica, the therapist, would not allow him to do that. And she not only was saying to him, sit up, but she was physically moving him so that he had to sit up. And he had a tantrum as a result of that. He was very unhappy and cried for 20 minutes. And they show snippets of the tantrum. They're not going to show you 20 full minutes. We all know what a tantrum looks like, right? Oh, don't we? But in any case, he's really upset and offended that she won't let him play in the way that he would like to play. But Jessica makes the point, if we let him forever lay down and play with his toys, he's not going to progress to the next stage where he's going to play with someone else. It's really hard to play with someone else when you're face planted in the carpet, right? You're looking at the shag and you're looking at the wheel, and it's really hard to make the eye contact. Well, we don't want that for our kids. We want them to sit up and play appropriately so that they're ready for the next milestone, which is playing side by side with somebody and then interacting with somebody. So she doesn't allow him to lay down, and we saw that in the beginning he tantrumed about it. Now, he's still doing it occasionally, although she said not as much. He's still doing it occasionally, but then she says to him, sit up, and he's all too happy to sit up, and there's no tears over it. Because he knows he's going to get to play with her, and that is more reinforcing to him now than what was reinforcing before, laying down and looking at the car. Okay, so many different things in this episode that I want to talk about, but I have all week to talk about it. But I want to point out a couple of things, because in this next hour, or maybe it's the third hour, we're going to be talking about DTT and NET. And so I want to come back to some of the examples that we saw here, because you saw some very clear NET and some very clear DTT. So let's talk briefly about what the difference between these two things are. DTT, which is discrete trial teaching. Those are those instances when we're teaching a very specific thing, and we're setting up trials, and they're saying to him, give me the one that's closed. And so he reaches over and he gets the jacket, and that's all he has to do, by the way. He's learning the receptive categories, receptive language, what you hear, right? He's not having, we do have her say later on, so we're working on the expressive at the same time, but he's learning the receptive categories. So he's learning clothes. So she says, give me clothes. He has to pick out which one is actually clothes. And he picks the jacket and he gives it to her, and she says, good, it's a jacket. And then she says to him, what's a jacket? And he now expressively needs to be able to label the category and say it's clothes. He has a hard time with that particular one. When it was the fire truck, he was able, she said, give me the vehicle, and he grabbed the fire truck and he gave it to her, and she said, it's a fire truck. Yes, a fire truck is a vehicle. And then she said, what's a fire truck? And then he said, it's a vehicle, right? So that's DTT. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and he got reinforced for saying that it was a vehicle. She was praising him, but then after he did a certain number of them and got them right, then he got to go play. That was his reinforcement. So that's DTT, very specific. She's got the, a lot of times you'll see a field of 3. It's not always that way, but she's delivering what we call an SD. She's giving him a direction, something to do or say. She says, give me, right? And he gives it to her, and then he gets reinforced for it. That's DTT. DTT, really great for teaching things. When we want to teach something in the beginning, what we were talking about before, if we want to teach quantum physics, we're not going to do it in a carnival with all these distractions. DTT is a way of making it really distractionless so that the child has the ultimate optimal opportunity to learn something. Okay, but we never want to stop with DTT, because at some point, if you're going to really learn quantum physics, you need to be able to explain it in a carnival, right? If you really understand it. And at some point, this child has to go out into the community and be able to understand what a vehicle is and what clothes are, with lots of distractions. So we also work on things in an NET way, natural environment training. And so you saw when she said to him first thing in the morning, and she said to him, what do you want to play with? And he said, trains. Well, that was manding. He was requesting the thing that he wanted to play with. And then she showed you all the different things that she can be working on while he's playing with the train that are worked on in real life, that she can be encouraging him to comply. She can be encouraging him to make eye contact. She could work on colors. She can work on functional pretend play. There are any one of 1,000 things that she can be working on while they're playing trains. But it's not a drill. It's just more natural. And we always want to be working on things in these two ways, teaching a skill in DTT and getting the child to be a little comfortable with it, and then taking it and putting it in the natural environment. And then after that, taking it out into the community and having him try it with a vast majority of people. So, he might learn about these vehicles in the DTT way, but then at some point they're going to say, let's play with vehicles today, the car, and talk about that, so that then later on they can go out to the mall and they can be pointing at the car and give him the opportunity to call something a vehicle there. So a lot can be happening in any given moment. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about later on when we talk about NET, how we can use every single moment as a teaching moment to help to shore up what we're learning in those DTT lessons. Really exciting. Again, I want to tell you that you can be watching the A Word from beginning to end on their YouTube channel, where you can start and stop and rewind all of those different things. But it's an amazing opportunity to learn a lot about ABA and the progression that is made. I think tomorrow we're going to talk specifically about how we start out with labeling things and then work on categories and work on features, so that your child ends up having this global understanding that a shirt isn't just a shirt is also clothes, right? And being able to put that together with a whole bunch of different things. It's how we build this language in this very round, heavy way that it's so full and diverse, instead of just learning a shirt, which is no flexibility. Okay. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to look at some of your viewer responses from today's question of the day. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. Skills was designed to equip educators of children with autism everything they'll need to get their students on the right track towards recovery. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and this time every day we like to share some of the things that you guys have written in, and I've already gotten the tissue out. It's clearly a three-hanky affair here. It moves me, the things that you guys write in and say. So our question of the day was, what do you wish your child could say to you? Right? Breathing. Okay, and the first one is, of course, mommy. Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, you know, there was a long period of time when I didn't know if my son was going to say that. And we actually got the first time he said, "I love you, mommy," on videotape. And I still, to this day, I'm a mess anytime I think about it. And you know what? Bless you, because isn't it amazing the world that we move in? Because there's so many people who take that for granted every day. But when your child does say it, it's going to be monumental. Okay, moving on. So how he is feeling and why he is feeling what he's feeling. I think a lot of us can share that. Why he gets so, and I'm not going to use the word that they use, but why he gets so ticked off over such little things. Here's another one, a mom who writes it and says, "I love you," that's what they're waiting for their child to say. It's coming. Another person who says what he wants. Yes, and when he is able to tell you what he wants, your whole life is going to get so much better. Not just because he's able to tell you what he wants, because the challenging behavior will start to slip away. Oh, here's a really good one. This is a tough one. Sorry and mean it. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about perspective taking. I think it's tomorrow, about a child understanding sorry and meaning it. Okay. Oh, and this person went on to write that that the hitting, that apparently there's some hitting that's going on, would be easier if she could say sorry and mean it. Okay. Oh, yeah. Here's a good one too. What happens when I'm not around? This goes for my verbal and nonverbal sons. Yeah, it's rough, huh? We work on this thing at home where I will see my son and I'll say, "So what'd you do at school today?" And he says, "Nothing," or "stuff," or whatever. And he wants to go back to doing whatever he's going back to doing. So I now have taken to telling him, "You got to tell me 2 things. And as soon as you tell me the 2 things and I get to ask 2 questions about both things, then you can go back to doing what you're doing." And so he's gotten really good at telling me at least 2 things. So now I at least know 2 things that happen at school. We're working on it. Another person, I think it's boys in general too. I can ask my husband that. "So how was work?" "Good." Yeah, right? Whereas my husband says, how is work? And I go, well, you know, and then 3 hours later, I'm done talking. Okay. Another person, the question again was, what do you wish your child could say to you? And this person wrote in and said, I wish that he could tell me when he really doesn't feel well. He has a high pain tolerance, and sometimes we don't even know when he isn't feeling well. That is so rough. Another person who writes in and says, I love you, Mommy. Another who says, I wish she would just be able to tell me when she wasn't feeling well. That's a really rough one, isn't it? Sometimes I wonder, since she, and again, another person who has another high tolerance of pain, or if someone was being mean to her. Yeah, the bullying thing. We're all learning about that, right? Okay, another person who writes in and says, I would love to hear my grandson say, I love you, Grandma. He is so close, and even though I know he loves me, it would be music to my ears. Of course it would be. Another person who says, I wish he could tell me what hurts when he's sick. It's so frustrating taking care of him and not always being able to tell if he has like a headache or a sore throat, and about his day at school. Never take the simple things for granted. Isn't that the truth? I will tell you that for those of you who are talking about the not feeling well, that if you've done any iconic communication systems or something like PECS, that there are pictures that you can show a child and ask them to point to. Of course, you don't want to be starting to work on that when they're not feeling well, but when they are feeling well and you're fairly confident that they're feeling well, you can begin to work on those series of icons to be able to, of course, that's a receptive language skill. They've got to have enough receptive language to understand. We just saw Jack Riley that, where's your head? And so, they got to understand, well, this is my head. So you have to start wherever it is that you have to work, but you can work up to the point where you can say to a child, where does it hurt? And they can point to a picture. And a lot of our kids find it easier to point to a picture than to point on themselves. I don't know why, but it is a way of gaining communication, functional communication for those kinds of things. Our question again today was, what do you wish your child could tell you? Another person who wrote in and said, I love you, Mommy. I've never heard that out of my sweet 7-year-old, but I'm waiting for the day it happens because I know he does. And write us, please, when he does. I would love to hear that. Okay, another person who says, I wish my son would ask why. Yes, the WH questions, really important that our kids reach a milestone where they're able to say that. It's something that we can work towards. There are lessons and skills that will help us to work towards them, but it's huge when they ask why. Okay, so here's one here who says, to all of you who yearn to hear I love you, my son is 6 years old and just now starting to talk through much therapy and faith. I know so much how you feel. Okay, breathing. But love speaks so much louder than words. I always try to remember that. Keep your faith. We are all in this together. Amen. Absolutely. Keep the faith. Okay, another person who writes in that what they want to hear more than anything else is Mama. Absolutely. Another person who writes in and says a lot. What happens at school each day, how they're being treated. Also, I would love to be able to have a simple conversation with both of my children with autism. I'll tell you, we can work towards these things. Stick with us because we're going to talk about building that language. Another person who writes in and says, I love you, Mommy. My boy is 7, lost his speech at 15 months and talks with a device, but he has not learned I love you yet. One day, it's coming. It's coming. Another one who writes in and said, I just wish he could tell us how he is feeling and what he is thinking. Absolutely. Another person who says how his day really was at school, what he did, things like that. Isn't it amazing what people take for granted? Just amazing. Somebody who says, what a great question. I'm going to be following these answers all day. Thank you for asking and letting us all share. Absolutely. And thank you guys for are reading each other's things and shoring each other up. I love it. Another person who says that they want to know how the day was at school. Another one, why he gets so mad easily and what he thinks about his mom not being here. You know, that's a rough one. That is a rough one. But I'm going to guess that there's reason to be mad, right? It's just so devastating. Okay, another person who says, I wish my son can express straight away when he is in pain or difficulties in his casual life. Somebody else who says what he's feeling, especially if he's not well, how his day has been, what his dreams are, what he's thinking, what he'd like to do when he grows up. You know, our kids deserve to be able to tell us these things, and we deserve as parents to be able to hear them. So we're going to keep working on them. And as somebody said, keeping the faith, not giving up. Just having a general conversation such as how was your day at school, express your feelings, etc. But that they wouldn't change their daughter for the world. Absolutely not. I would love for him to tell me what's going on in school so I can help him get over his anxiety about going. Nothing is as frustrating as for him not to be able to tell me. Yeah, it's rough. Get a BCBA on that. Get it if your child is resisting going to school and they're having anxiety about going to school, get a BCBA to look at it from all different angles. Please, please, please get that help. How she feels. But I can say that she's doing so well. She's doing things I never thought possible. I would love for her to be able to have a conversation, but I hope that will come in time. I can wait. Yes. And we're working towards all of these things. And another person who says, I wish she could say, Mama, I love you. Hang in there. We heard from the person whose child is 6 and starting to say these things. These are wonderful. And there's even more, and there's more on the other site. If we have time, we will get to them, but I need to take a tissue break. So let's take a break, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes, and we're going to be talking more about building language. How can we get this wish list fulfilled? So stick with us. Back in a moment.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. Card e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection, and you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. Card e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them. And between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module, and then after you complete all of them you have a final exam, and by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use Card e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Thank you so much. You guys have been writing in to our question of the day. What do you wish your child could say to you? And what an inspirational list. We haven't been able to get through all of them, but if we have time later on, we'll read some more of them. But I'd like to get to some of the things that we can do to grow and develop language and functional communication skills. And we talked a little bit about manding before. This is one of our jargon words, manding. I had never heard of manding before my child had autism and was having ABA therapy. And I love, if you're watching the A Word, and we just showed a clip from it a few minutes ago, there's a moment in one of the episodes where the therapist is talking to the dad and saying, well, you know, right now what we're really working on is targeting on manding. And he says, I'm sorry, what did you say? And she says, well, we're working on manding. And if you are, once you make friends with the jargon, it's funny. It's really like going to the dark side, because then you're like, well, manding, as if, well, everybody knows what manding is, when in fact, no one outside of our community has any idea what manding is. So, and the dad says, I'm sorry, I don't even know what you're saying. Can you spell it for me? So we're talking about manding. And if you don't know what it is, that's okay. I'm gonna explain it to you right now. Manding is when your child requests something. So think of command. When we command, because we want something, right? So manding, and it's a really important skill that all children need to gain. And it's the thing I was talking about earlier, that when a child is manding, when their skill in manding goes up, their challenging behavior will go down. It is literally what happens when a typically developing child is in the terrible twos. It's because they haven't gotten enough manding under their belt, so that they're still having to tantrum. And our kids, unfortunately, because if they have a language deficit, then their manding skills aren't strong enough, so we're going to continue to have that challenging behavior go on and on and on until they have another means of getting their needs met. It just makes sense, right? On a certain level. So we need to be teaching manding. And then I want to talk a little bit about mand frames so that we can learn how we go from manding to getting to a full sentence. So let's start with manding to start with. When a typical developing child wants something and they will hear, sometimes they'll just soak it up. They'll have heard the word many times, and typically a parent will be saying something, they'll point to something and go, dog, with all children, right? But the typically developing child pick that up and go, oh, you're pointing at that thing, which means that you're saying that, so I'm going to try uttering it. They do, and the first time they utter it, everybody goes, oh, good, you said dog, right? And they get so reinforced by it that they start noticing other words and they start picking up other words. And at a certain point, usually with typically developing children, the parents just stop reacting every time the child says something until they get to the next big milestone. Like maybe they say a full sentence and they go, wow, when they put it on Facebook, my child said a full sentence. And the child just continues to soak up language and the parent stops reinforcing it because they don't need to. The child's learning it. They find it reinforcing enough. The child is excited by the fact that they're using language and they're being heard and understood and can communicate. Great. That's typically developing. That's not our story, right? For most of us. So how do we get it to be our story? Well, we have to go in and make manding reinforcing. And we got to do it in very specific ways, and we got to do it constantly. Constantly. The consequences have to be something that the child can count on. So if, and when we're working on manding, we're, especially in the beginning, clear a day or two or a week and say, we're going to work on manding and we're really not going to worry about much else at all. Because your child, you know, they might throw something and you go, oh, I really want to stop and have a talk with the child who isn't listening anyway, but you feel compelled. And I got to tell you, it's a waste of time. Get the manding under control and you'll see that throwing behavior might go away on its own, or it's going to at least decrease. So how do we get the child to man? We're going to take the things that the child already, that we know that the child loves, and we're going to put it someplace where it's just close enough that they can notice it, but that they can't get it all on their own. So if the child loves chocolate chip cookies, then we're going to go buy some chocolate chip cookies. Now, we're not going to feed the child 300 chocolate chip cookies and make them sick, right? We have to have a certain measure of common sense. And if the child is diabetic and the doctor has said absolutely no chocolate chip cookies, that we're going to find something else, something closely related that's safe for the child. So we never want to be giving a child, here are our guidelines. We want to be reasonable and healthy and safe, but we can afford to throw some of our rules out the window. If we have a hard and fast rule that there are no cookies before lunch, when we're working on manding, we might loosen that up a bit, right? And so we bring out the cookies if that's the thing that the child is really interested in, and maybe we're going to break the cookie up into little pieces, little bite-sized morsels for a child. They're not going to choke, but you know, a small amount that it's only going to take them a couple of seconds to consume. And we got it on a plate or a basket or something that's really exciting. And we let them see it, and the child is reaching for and wants. And it really has to be something that is that reinforcing that the child would potentially reach for it. And so, you know, I'm going to say that the pen is the cookie, right? So, you know, we're not trying to tease, but we're trying to tempt. Tempt is the good word. So the cookies waft by, right? And the child, you know, is paying attention to that. And if it's truly reinforcing to them, they're going to want to start to reach. And we're just going to gently pull it away and hold up one little piece. And we are going to ask the child to do something in order to get that piece of cookie. Now, if we are at a place where the child is already making utterances, where the child is going ooh and ah, and we've worked a little bit on echoics, and we see that the child can make sounds, then we're going to ask the child to make a sound for the cookie. And it may just be that we say cookie, and the child says guh. We go, yay, that's fabulous. That's called reinforcing an approximation. And we do want to do that. Because if the child says, oh, I made a sound, and they're happy, the child's going to want to make more sounds. And we can shape that sound. We can perfect it over time. But if the child is capable of making sound, we want a sound to begin with. As we work on it, we're, you know, once the child sees, oh, if I go, ooh, I'm going to get the cookie, then we're going to start, you know, when they see that they 100% are going to get it, then we're going to make it tougher for them and say, k, 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 right? So the child makes some, we go, yay, it's an approximation. We're going to work, we're going to shape that up to a k, to a k, to a cook, to a cookie, right? But the child has to be reinforced on a regular basis. We don't want them to get to the point where they're frustrated, right? Now, if the child has made absolutely no sounds and you've been working on a coax and the child is not producing sound, this is not the time to panic, but it's also not the time to give up and say, well, then we're not going to get to manding. Manding can be done with gesture. Manding can be done with sign. Manding can be done pointing to an iconic communication system like PECS or something else like that. And I think it might be tomorrow that we're having somebody come in and talk about specifically teaching functional communication when there is not sound. I think that's tomorrow, but I'll double check on that. But in any case, there is a very specific way in which you can, if you're holding out the cookie and the child wants the cookie and you've got the picture of the cookie, you can prompt the child that they touch the picture of the cookie and then they get the piece of the cookie. And what the child learns over time, you fade your prompt so that the child knows I have to touch that picture of the cookie and that's what gets me the cookie. So that you can reach a stage very quickly, by the way, because if the child knows I touch that card that has a cookie on it and I get a piece of cookie, the child's going to be over there touching if it's reinforcing enough, right? And we have to pick things that are reinforcing. The child be over there touching the picture of the cookie, which is them requesting the cookie. And then we can move on to requesting a drink or requesting a hug or, requesting all kinds of different things. There are millions of PECs. And we can also use devices to be able to maintain. It used to be that you had those big, huge PECS books that they would be in subcategories, but the child had to be flipping through and pointing through to communicate. And now, of course, you can do that on an app on the phone in seconds. And they can scroll through and find the things that they want to find. Okay, little disclaimer though, we all want our children to be able to speak, right? And so I know it's so emotional for parents sometimes when somebody says we're going to start with signing or we're going to start with iconic communication system. And it feels like a little death, like, oh, you're giving up on my child ever speaking. What I want you to know is that studies show completely the opposite. That if we give functional communications to a child who is struggling with vocal production and we give them functional communication skills, we are more likely to get to speech than if we don't give them that intermediary. Remember, we're teaching functional communication skills, so what the child learns is I have a way to communicate with you. I don't have to tantrum to get you to see what I want. And when we can do that, they find it so reinforcing that we can really begin to work on, and for some of our kids, it's tough. That for them to be able to vocalize is a really tough thing. But studies have shown that the best way to get there is to give them the functional communication skill first. You're going to be more likely to be successful if you give them the functional communication skill. Just want to be clear about that. Okay. So once we've gotten to the point where a child, and the first couple are the hardest, I have to tell you, and that's why we want to save those things that are really reinforcing for the first couple. So if it's the cookie, if it's the dog, if it's mom, if it's whatever, that they don't get access to it until they have some sort of approximation for it. So if it's daddy who is really, really reinforcing, and the daddy comes to the door home from work, and the child wants to run to daddy, and you scoop up the child and say, it's daddy, say daddy, and as soon as they say duh, they can go and be with daddy, right? It's not to be cruel, it is not to be punishing. Really important that you be coming at it from the point of view of that he's the reward. It's not the punishment, but it does mean having to distance it until they do the thing that allows them to do it. And if you're seeing that the child just can't, give them an alternative. Give them, I can't remember what the sign for dad is. I think it's something pointing to the head, but give them an alternative, something that they can do, and prompt them to do it. Maybe it's a picture of daddy, and then you take their hand and touch it, so that they know, okay, as soon as I touch the picture of daddy, I get daddy. We need to get to that reinforcement. There should never be a thing where it's this standoff, and it's an hour later, and you're still sitting there on the floor crying and saying, just say duh, right? Help them to get the answer right. help them. And if the sound isn't coming, then give them another alternative, because what we're focusing on here is reinforcing a functional communication skill. Okay? Not torturing the child. Once they get one or two of them, you will see that the child is more interested, and it will be easier to teach the 3,000 that come after that. And again, approximations are okay. We're not trying to get a child who hasn't spoken to say oscillating sprinkler, right? We want them, if they're making sound, that's a good place to start. But as we go along, you know, we'll make it a little bit tougher every now and then. Okay, so you've gotten the manding, and your child should be manding hundreds of times a day. Once your child is manding hundreds of times a day, and literally with little kids that are gaining language skills, the therapist will have a clicker or be making hash marks on a piece of paper to add up how many times are they manding. And your child should be manding hundreds of times a day. And in the beginning, you want to reinforce every single time. So the child asks for the cookie and you're going, I really don't want them to spoil their dinner. You know what? Spoil dinner today. Spoil dinner for this week, because we're working on the big ones, language skills, right? And there'll be plenty of time next week or tomorrow or Thursday to say we're not doing that, right? We can work on delaying gratification, but for right now, we want for our kids to know, I say it, I get it. Okay, then eventually we can start working on a manned frame, so that we're going to put other words with it and get them to echo those. So you'll hear, if you watch the early episodes of the A Word, that at first the child is saying g, right? Then they're saying k, then cookie, cookie, right? So they get to, you know, it's still going to be a little bit garbled, but they're saying 2 syllables for cookie, right? That have a little bit of percussive in them. So we're doing better, better, better. Now we want to add in I want cookie, and we might start with just want cookie or more cookie or cookie please, right? And we can work on all of those different things, but very quickly we're going to get the child to say I want cookie. Now, how do you make that happen? Because here's the child, and they're there saying cookie, 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 right? And so you hold up the cookie. The child knows, because you've been working on this for a while, and you said cookie, and they got the cookie, right? And probably it's just a piece of cookie. You hold up the cookie, and you say I. And the child at this point knows, if I do what you ask me to do, I'm going to get the thing I want, which is the cookie. So they'll say I, and then you say want cookie. And it's totally fine for you to be prompting it. I want cookie. But eventually you're going to say I, and the child's going to say, I want cookie. Yay! Now we're getting a sentence. And it's amazing, because the child, if you do it enough times, the child knows, I'm going to have to do that to get the cookie. And we very quickly are going to jump from a child who has not been manding to a child who's manding in full sentences. It can happen so fast if we are consistent. Again, that's when it's vocal, and it may be that you got to back it up and do another phase beforehand with sign or with iconic communication system. But what's important to remember is, if it's 300 steps, or if it's 22 steps, or if it's 3,022 steps, you are going to be able to teach your child functional communication skills. And so, you know, that list that you guys gave us today of the things that you want your children to be able to say, that starts with step 1. Whatever step 1 is for your child, but we can help our children to be able to communicate. And that is life-changing for us. It's certainly life-changing for them. It's so worth it. Okay, stick with us. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back in just a minute.
My name is Crystal Shepard.
I'm Pete.
And our son Logan was diagnosed in February of 2003. Wow, it seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to find CARD when he was 20 months old.
Woo!
said, "You need to go to this place. I've researched it. You need to go right now." So I went and knocked on the door, and we found Doreen.
Doreen, we sat down, and I'll never forget what she said. She goes, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get him caught up and make sure he never falls behind again." I was like, that's it, you know.
He's a very fun, popular kid.
Rock star.
Rock star. He's a drummer, quite an accomplished drummer. He never stops talking. He's got a funny story and a smile for everybody that he meets. And it's pretty amazing. He's a completely different kid. Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
My name's Monica.
And I'm Mark.
And we have a son, Riley, and he is autistic.
Riley was almost completely non-communicative at the time that he was diagnosed. Really no language, no interest in speaking. And one of the big changes is he independently states a lot of things now.
I need to walk.
You need to walk? Make him walk. Asks for things that he wants, responds appropriately.
Hi, Daddy Doreen.
Oh, so nice. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider. And if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
And now she engages with everybody. It's wonderful. She likes to play, and she's very affectionate, and she expresses that now. Her language has gotten a lot better just in the last 4 months. It's amazing.
Since starting with CARD, Amaya's made a ton of progress, and we couldn't be more grateful that she has become potty trained, started using utensils individually. She is learning how to navigate public, is holding our hands, and just wanting to be around people more. So we're so grateful for everything that you guys have done.
Hi, Dr. Grandpa Shay. Congratulations on your 20-year anniversary of CARD. I love all my CARD teachers. They are the best. And now I'd like to play you a Beatles song. It's called Cross the Universe.
I first saw Dr. Grandpa Shay speak at a biomedical conference somewhere, and I was just so impressed with her. She stood up there and she talked with such confidence about recovery and what she could do for these children, and she had a whole curriculum, and I was just so impressed. But she said things like, you know, teach them, help them to develop these other skills that they have. And I thought that was so neat hearing that from her, that it would be good for them socially and help them to bridge with others. And so over the years, that's actually something my son has developed. You know, if he hadn't had speech therapy or OT over the years, he probably would be just about, you know, pretty much the same child still, not so different. But if he hadn't had CARD, I mean, he would be a completely different child. This program has unlocked the door for him to have a bright future.
Bye. Thanks for watching.
My name is Rachel Pekorski, and I have a son, Kyle Pekorski, who's 7 years old now.
Cool art by Kyle.
Around 15 months, we noticed that he had lost some speech, that he was head banging, he had tantrums, and we were lucky. We waited and we got in with Card, and it started working right away.
I have another exciting feature. If you put more marbles in, they alternate.
He's in a second grade class. He's at the top of his class. He reads over 100 words a minute. He's reading at 5th grade level. He loves space and astronomy, and he'll tell you, why does Venus rotate backwards? Yeah, why don't the marbles go up? Why do they go down?
Because gravity.
And he's always wanting to know more.
Why you're the one that takes the microphone?
He loves to surf.
First, I didn't want to surf, but now I love to surf.
He loves to horseback ride.
I won a trophy.
You have made a difference in his life.
Card helped me to save.
I owe everything to you. Now, who built this?
I did.
And are you a good builder?
Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I wanted to, it's that time of the day when we talk about myths. And I'm hearing something. I don't know whether my computer is still on one of my other pages showing something. So I'll have to take care of that in just a second. There's like a noise here in the studio. In any case, I like to talk about a myth from time to time, and about the fact that there are so many myths surrounding autism and ABA in particular, and how completely... There we go. I found my noise. I can concentrate now. It's a good thing. Anyway, it really is so frustrating to me that some of these myths continue, because especially if it holds us back from doing something that we want to do with one of our children, if it holds us back from being able to get them the help and the support, then I really want to demolish these myths, right? Okay, so I try to take on one a day now, one little myth at a day, so I can get all hepped up about it, and then we can move on, right? And if we all spread the word that this is a myth, it's not reality, then we'll have made progress, right? Okay, so today's myth, myth number 8, is that ABA is only available in the home and that a parent must be present. Now, here's part of the problem with some of the myths that surround ABA and autism, that there is some element of truth, or that it was true at one time. And that's certainly the case with this one. There is an element of truth to this, and there is certainly an element of truth that this was the case at one time. We know that ABA is really intensive, and in order for us to get the results that we want to see, that for some of our kids, that's going to mean a 25 to 40 hour a week program, that they're going to need to work on something. And for a long time, it was, for lots of different reasons, it was felt that it was ideal for this to be done in the home. And one of the many reasons was that the parents need to get trained in this technique so that they can uphold it when the therapists leave. Even if you're doing 40 hours a week, that leaves a whole lot of hours during the week when no one is there except for the caregivers. And so absolutely essential that the caregivers become really good at ABA. I always say, I want to be on my child's team, and I don't want to be the weakest person on the team. Don't you feel that way too? So essential that as parents and as caregivers that we become strong members of the team and that we learn these techniques. And we can do that by immersing ourselves in it and having it happen in the home, certainly, but that is not the only way in which we can learn, right? And I think that sort of is not giving us the benefit of the doubt, because when we see how much progress our children can make, we get really motivated. And I have met some incredible parents on this journey, the strongest people I have ever have had the pleasure to meet in my life. Autism parents are awesome people, and they can scale mountains. I'll tell you what, after we get the autism thing all figured out, we can then rearrange the rest of the world, because we overcome things that are amazing. Amazing. So I believe that parents, and I think more and more people are jumping onto this bandwagon too, that we are going to learn how to do this no matter what, whether it's happening intensively in our home or not. And the big problem with when one parent has to stay home and be present for all the therapy to happen is that it limits the amount of income that a family can make. And we know, a study just came out a couple of weeks ago suggesting that the income of a family dealing with a child with autism is going to be substantially lower than a family that isn't, because of these kinds of things. We have to be available for a certain amount of stuff that's happening for our child, which reduces our ability to make income. And yet we know we have all these other expenses, so it becomes a hardship. And I can think of several different cases when my child was diagnosed and we found out about ABA. I remember talking to a couple of other parents and saying, are you going to do this? I was still in that questioning phase about what's the deal with this? Is it worthwhile? You know, how does it work? Does it work? And I remember talking to a group of other parents and them saying, we're not going to do it because we can't. Our child has to go to daycare and they won't fund it in a daycare. And so end of story, because we will lose our house and we will not be able to feed our child if we don't continue to be a two-income family. And you know, that was certainly our story, that for me to not work at all was not going to work. We got into the mode that a lot of parents do, which was, how can we solve this? How can we make it so that I can work at home and our child can be having therapy? And you know, and I won't tell you that it worked great, but we managed somehow. But that was our only alternative. And there were many parents that I met who said, you're asking me to take care of my child now in exchange for complete and total financial ruin, and I can't do it. And they didn't do it. And that's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, is having to pick between those two things, because how could you ask a parent to do that? And I know for us, we picked complete and total financial ruin. Woohoo! But I have a child who I can have a conversation with now. And for me, that was my only choice. That was, and for my husband as well, it was our only choice. I certainly understand, and I'm not trying to pass judgment for parents who could not do that at all, because we all have to pick, but what a terrible choice. What a terrible, horrible choice. Well, a lot of people are starting to see this now and saying it shouldn't be an either or proposition. In this economy where it takes two incomes to keep a roof over the head and food on the table, we have to be able to find a way for our kids to get what is necessary for them without destroying the family. And so the reality is that more and more schools and center-based ABA programs are springing up around the country. Schools are saying, hey, we're part of this equation. And especially, I mean, there comes a time when kids are little, you have the option to leave them at home, but there comes a time when you either have to decide to homeschool or send them to school. And it's a really difficult decision for families, because if a school isn't properly trained in these techniques, then is it time that's wasted that the child could be making progress if they had access to the techniques? Well, what a terrible choice to make there too. But what we're seeing is that schools are starting to step up. More and more of them, certainly not enough yet, but more and more schools are saying, look, we see the wave. We see it coming. We've seen the numbers. We know where we need to get, so we're going to get trained appropriately in this. We are going to be skilled at ABA, and everybody from the lady who dishes up the macaroni and cheese in the lunch line, to the bus driver, to the aides, to the, you know, all the paraprofessionals, to the teachers, to the administrative staff, we're going to get versed in these techniques. We're going to understand the ins and outs of ABA, and we are going to make a difference with these kids. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And as these schools start to implement, and we can all point to them and say, here's the model, then more schools are going to have to jump on the bandwagon. If you talk to teachers, they say something's got to happen, because we're not going to survive unless we get better at dealing with behavioral issues. We're just You know, when push comes to shove, and schools are starting to adopt this. Also, center-based systems are springing up around the country. I know of 2 that CARD has right now, and one that is an actual school that they have taken a system of doing ABA with a supervisor and with therapists who are in a classroom with a teacher who's very skilled at ABA, and there's one-on-one for kids who are very profoundly affected so that they are getting the curriculum, getting that behavioral support that they need with their supervisor on staff in this very contained school. Now, that's not going to be for everyone, but it's the answer for a lot of people so that they don't have to quit their jobs, lose their homes in order for their children to have this level of quality ABA therapy. So if this is exciting to you, and it really should be, I want for you to know you've got a little homework to do in terms of finding where. The 2 CARD offices that are doing center-based and school system are in the Maryland office, which services, I think it's actually Virginia, but it services Maryland and Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and in Arizona. But wherever you are, have your voice be heard. Have your voice be heard that this is the kind of thing that you are interested in, because that's what's going to bring the change. And there are other organizations besides CARD that are doing this as well, that are in more places around the world, but you'll have to do a little bit of homework. And when you find one and you find how great it is, please let me know so that I can be forwarding that information to everybody else. Because we are going to see this happen more and more. It makes sense, right? Now, the parents still have to get really skilled at ABA, but what I've been able to see in these locations is it's very motivated parents who want to do what's best for their child, who want to provide them with a basis and know that they got to keep a roof over their head too, but it by no means they're going to drop their child off and that's the last they're going to hear. So if you're one of those people who's really interested, let us know, and let us know what you find out in your neck of the woods for these school-based and center-based. It's the wave of the future. It's coming. And so let's support it as much as we can. But in the meantime, take advantage if you live in those parts of the world where it already exists. Okay. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking specifically about NET. I promised you earlier that we're going to talk about NET. So we're going to talk about how we can make every single moment in the day a teaching moment wherever we are. Stick with us. We're here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of the CARD Fresno office, and it's a special treat for us to have her with us today. Yeah. And we're going to be asking her to talk to us about working with children who are nonverbal. So when a child is not speaking, are we saying that they're non-vocal or non-verbal?
The correct terminology is non-vocal.
Okay.
Because when we're saying vocal, vocal means sound. So sound is being emitted.
Okay.
So verbal means that the child is able to communicate to another person that they need something, they have desires, they have wants, and a verbal response might be handing a picture.
Okay.
It might also be a sign. Might also be pressing a button to ask for something.
Okay.
Those would all be considered verbal behavior. But if they don't have speech, we might say that they're non-vocal. So imagine then if you have a child who's not developing speech typically, they have no way to tell their parent what they need, you're going to see frustration levels increase. And if I don't have a way to appropriately get my point across, I'm going to start developing some really bad excessive behaviors to communicate. Right. So that's when we start to see the noncompliance, the tantrums, the aggression, even self-injurious behaviors emerge. We're going to use really short and concise and clear speech. Pair it with a gesture. And then when the child starts responding, immediately praise. Right. Immediately give a reward. So So then that way the child is starting to understand, I got it. I'm understanding what she's wanting me to do. At the same time as working on receptive instructions, we do need to teach the child also a way for them to communicate too.
Right.
So we're going to start working on very basic requesting behavior. So they're able to request for things. And so the two kind of go hand in hand.
If there are no sounds, then maybe we start with signs.
You could start with signs, or you could start with an icon. As a parent, you're going to know your kid best in the sense that you're going to know kind of what they like. If you have a kiddo who likes to look at pictures, who likes to look at books, maybe an icon is going to be something that would be preferred, and they would get really good at giving it. If you have a child who is, you're like, wow, you know, they have really great fine motor. Maybe they can already string beads. Maybe they can do a shape sorter. You know, the ability to manipulate their hands and their fingers is pretty solid. Maybe you might want to work on some very basic signs.
Okay, so taking whatever the strength is and running with that.
Absolutely. So let's say that you do an icon or you do a sign. Both of those forms of communication have been linked to development of expressive speech. So, you know, if that's something that we're starting with today because we need to get through today,
right,
that doesn't mean that that's what we're going to end up doing tomorrow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, their headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I promised you we would talk a little bit about NET, Natural Environment Training. And then in a little while, we're going to talk about DTT, Discrete Trial Teaching. And the thing about natural environment training is that it's sort of like flinging open the windows and saying anything's fair game. So every single moment becomes an opportunity to work on something. And I think that you'll find that as you start working on ABA therapy and your child responds to it and they start to understand, okay, there are going to be demands that are going to be put on me, but when I comply with the demands, good things happen. Then your child is going to be interested in getting into that kind of an environment with you as often as possible. And you know what they say about, you know, what busy hands, that idle hands get into trouble, but busy hands are I don't know what exactly the whole thing is, but it's better when your child is busy doing something because they're less likely to get into trouble, is what the whole phrase is supposed to be about. So same thing is true for our kids, that if we keep them busy and in the learning mode, we will see that there's less opportunity for them to melt down, there's less opportunity for them to tantrum, and there's less opportunity for them to engage in challenging behaviors. So, and I like to include other people. So when you go out into the world, I like to make them all a part of my autism therapy team and give them the opportunity to be helping us to work on the things that we're working on. Case in point, on Saturday, we were at a big birthday party, and it was for friends of ours whose kids are younger. So there were a lot of younger kids at this event, and there was a big bouncy house, and my kid was one of 3 kids who were older. So not that much older. I mean, my son's 8.5, and the birthday party was for a 6-year-old. But the 6-year-old also has a 3-year-old brother. So there were some 3-year-olds, there were some 6-year-olds, and then there were a couple of 8-year-olds that were there at the party, and one 7-year-old, I think. And so it was very interesting because you know, it's a very wonky age, the 8-year-old thing, and it was a better group for my son to be with 6-year-olds than, say, if there had been 10-year-olds, because there's some things socially that 10-year-olds make a leap boy-wise that my son is a little bit like struggling with making that leap with the 10-year-old boys, right? Because they're all about being cool and being hip, and my son's just starting to get an idea of what that whole thing is about. It's frightening to me, but important, part of the social thing. But in any case, 6-year-olds, they're still excited about everything, and we're playing this game, and it's okay if you act excited. It doesn't mean that you're not cool. So lots of friends to play with, and very interesting. But from time to time, a parent, or at one point the birthday boy's grandmother, stopped and asked my child a question while my child was in the bouncy house. Okay, right? Not likely that my son is going to make great eye contact and stop and have a conversation. And it was one of those things where she said something to him and said, "How are you doing?" And my son just turned and walked away, right? And she was going to let it go because clearly he was playing in the bouncy house. And, I'm sure that she knows he's got other stuff going on too. And she wasn't going to push the issue. I, of course, was going to push the issue. So I said, whoa, 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 come back here. And I said, somebody just talked to you. Do you know who was talking to you? And of course, my son stops because he knows, okay, here we go, right? And so I said, did you hear what she said? And he said, no, I didn't know she was talking to me. And I said, okay, but she was. So now what are you going to do? So now we're working on repairing the conversation. And so he stopped and he looked at her and he said, I'm sorry, did you say something to me? And she said, yes, I wanted to know how you are. And he said, I'm good. And he's running off, right? He's out the door. No, come back here. And then I said to her as he's coming back, I said, let's see if we can engage him in a conversation because his very preferred activity is, and he's got this energy, but he needs to focus. And she was like, so it's okay to interrupt him? Yes, please interrupt him so that I'm not the only person who's ever interrupting him, right? So and so she did. She stood and she had a little conversation with him. And then, they went back and forth 5 or 6 times. And then, I said to him, why don't you say, could you excuse me? I'm doing something, oh, great. I've got the end of the conversation and he goes back to different things. So, but I love it's amazing how often that the people that your child are interacting with in the natural environment will give up. Right? And that's part of the reason why our kids don't gain the skills that they could in the natural environment, because when somebody goes to say something to them and they say it once and the child doesn't respond, they back off and give up. And it's not just when they know that our kids have autism, they just give up. I see people do this with neurotypical children all the time. In fact, there were neurotypical kids who this grandmother was saying hi to, and the kids were ignoring her too, and she wasn't pushing it because, it's a birthday party, so why are you going to push it? Except for me, it was an opportunity as a parent to be able to help my child out and to coerce this person who was all too thrilled to have a conversation with him. So we'll be in the grocery store line and somebody will say something to my child and he's busy looking at the magazine, right? And he lets it go by. And they let it go by too, and here's a dropped connection. And I am very fond of saying, hey, can you help me out? Would you ask him that again? And then I'll give him a little prompt. I might give him just a little tweak and point and, give him the eyebrows. Oh, somebody's talking to me, right? And we can always be asking people. There are times, even though we're doing something in the natural environment and we want it to be as natural as possible, we can prompt everyone. We can prompt the person behind the cash register, and we can prompt our child because we want to increase the opportunities. If you were going to want to be a really good water skier, right? And every time you went to water ski, it was over in 30 seconds and you face planted in the water and you never got past that moment, how good of a water skier are you going to be? But if you had opportunities to rewind and go, okay, well, I just face planted, but let's rewind and back it up and try again right here, right now, you would have more opportunities. And yes, it's natural environment. We're not trying to make it DTT, but there are some times when we can kind of back things up and say, okay, can you ask him again? Could you help me out and do that? And I think you'll find that when you do that and coerce somebody and say, help me out, we're working on something here, would you ask him again? And don't let him off the hook. If he doesn't respond, say, excuse me, I'm asking you something. Get in his face a little bit, not in a negative way, but I want for him to respond to you and pay attention. People are thrilled to do that. Those busybodies that your child's in the middle of a tantrum and you're trying not to give it to attention because attention is what's feeding it. And those are the people who come over and go, here's a lollipop, be a good boy, right? Instead of having them do that, give them something else to do. Here, can you do this? They're all too happy to do that. People are thrilled. And you don't have to tell them autism, and you don't have to tell them that you're doing ABA. You can just say, hey, help me out here. Would you ask him again? Because we're working on this at home. Oh, know people are overjoyed. And then you can turn everything truly into a teaching moment. There's so much that happens when we're out in the environment. Don't ever be afraid to have somebody, whether it's a worker or a child or a parent. I remember a couple of years ago, I was visiting my niece in Texas, and my son and I were in an aisle of a store, and I don't even remember what started it, but my son started a conversation with somebody in the aisle of the store, and it was something, and there was a little bit of a disconnect, that it wasn't quite. And instead of prompting him, I prompted the other parent and said, "Hey, can you ask this, would you?" Oh, they were all too thrilled, and we ended up getting in the checkout line in front of and in back of each other and having this whole big conversation. And he made a friend, and he was very excited about the whole thing. Everything can be a teaching opportunity, and don't be afraid to include others in your teaching opportunity. I think you'll find that most of the time they're thrilled. Okay, let's take a break, and then when we come back, let's talk about some DTT tips, some things that we can do to make discrete trial teaching as effective as possible. Stick with us.
Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
A request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding. Screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The demand is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls the demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay. What do you want?
Good job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we just spoke a little bit about natural environment training before the break, and now I want to talk a little bit about DTT, discrete trial teaching. I know that when people talk about ABA, applied behavior analysis, sometimes you will hear people talking about DTT as if it is the same thing as ABA. It's not. DTT is one element of ABA, something that I really want to drive home. But if all we ever did was DTT, we would not get the desired result that we want, which is our children being able to interact with the world at large. So DTT is a really good way to start teaching a new skill. But once we have it in the DTT realm, we always want to be giving that lesson legs and taking it out into the community, putting it into the natural environment, and do further teaching within really organic settings, okay? But if just picking it up and getting it in the natural environment and in those organic settings worked, well, then our kids wouldn't have autism and they wouldn't have skill deficits, right? So how do we what's the bridge to get us from a place where our kids aren't learning to where they can learn it in the natural environment? And DTT can be very effective in helping us to get to that point. But I really get very concerned when people talk about DTT and ABA as being the same thing. They're not. DTT, one element of ABA, an important one, but only one element. Okay, so when we're doing DTT, and I think this is where as parents we have the most questions because it's foreign to us, right? I mean, for some of us, we've gotten out of the habit of doing the NET kind of things, the natural environment trainings that we would have done with our child had they been typical, and we've gone through a period of time where we're used to our child not responding to those kinds of things. So getting back in the swing and thinking creatively about, okay, I'm here in the doctor's office, what can I possibly be working on? Oh, I could be working on eye contact, and I can be working on compliance, and I can be working on colors, and I can be working on receptive labels in the doctor's office. I can be working on all these things in this natural environment, right? We just have to get into that creative mindset to see it. Whereas DTT, I don't think any of us, until we find ourselves on the spectrum, this is an unknown thing. So lots to learn, lots of skills for us to gain as far as DTT. So I want to take a little bit of time every week to give it little DTT tips. And one of the things that we're going to see with some elements of teaching DTT are that we're going to have stimuli that are going to help us to teach something. So if you're watching the A word, and we saw a clip of it earlier today, we saw that she was teaching the receptive labels for categories. Originally, and if you watch from the beginning, you'll see that they had flashcards that one at a time they would show a picture of a goat and say, what is it, to the child, and the child either knew it or didn't. Now, in the beginning, we're going to probe to see what they know and what they don't know. Okay, so for instance, she held up the card and said, what is it? And if he didn't respond at all, then that was a non-response. So it's a wrong response. But if he did know it and he said it's a goat, she would put it into another pile and try it at least one more time to make sure that in fact he knew that it was a goat. And if he does know it's a goat, then we're not going to worry about teaching that animal right now because it seems like he already has it, right? But for most of our kids starting out in the beginning, they really have difficulty with expressive understanding. I was saying receptive, I'll come back to that, but expressively right now is what I'm talking about, that they're expressing this is a goat, that they're saying that it's a goat, or that there's a sign for a goat. Okay, so once we see, all right, these are the animals that they don't know, we have to work on each one of them individually. So we might start with a pig. And so we have a card with a pig on it. This is stimuli. This is something that's going to help us to teach that it's a pig. Now, does it have to be two-dimensional on a card? No. And in fact, later on, we're going to try to find a pig statue so that we can use that so that the child doesn't think that a pig is a picture of a pig. We want to teach a global understanding we want them to understand this is a pig, it's a two-dimensional pig, this is a three-dimensional pig, this is the real pig, this is the phrase being a pig means this, a pig is an animal, a pig turns into pork. We want them to have the global understanding of pig, right? So we're going to need to get some pictures of pigs. You can download these off the internet and find a picture of a pig and print it out, or you can go buy flashcards that have all the animals on them, right? It doesn't have to be hard work to do these things. You can literally go on the internet and find a picture of a pig and print it out and cut it out and put it on an index card or print it out on cardstock, whatever works best for you. But there are different things that we are going to need a picture representation to start. And then eventually you are going to need a three-dimensional pig, right? But I will tell you, one of the things that somebody had given us a Fisher-Price Noah's Ark. And oh my gosh, it had 2 of everything, which ended up being a really great thing. Okay, so you're showing the pig, the child does not understand what the pig is, so now we are going to errorlessly, using the stimuli, teach that this is a pig. And we're going to teach it expressively and receptively. So at some point, I might put the picture of the pig down and there's nothing else there, and I might say, give me the pig. Now I'm teaching it receptively. And so the child has nothing else to give me, but I'm going to prompt the child, pick up the pig, the child gives me, yay, they get reinforced. Do they know what a pig is yet? No. But I'm going to keep doing this. Give me the pig. They give me the pig. Great. Yay, it's wonderful. At the same time, I'm working on that receptively so that they understand I say pig, that means this thing in the picture. And that give me means put it here. And again, I can prompt to get them to do it to start with, but I'll start fading my prompt. Fabulous. Every time I pick up the pig and every time they give it to me, I've got the pig picture in my hand and I hold it up next to my face and I go, what is it? So I'm close to my mouth. They see, that I'm looking for that kind. What is it? And I might start in the beginning and say, it's a pig, and get them to say pig, right? But over time, I'm going to say, give me the pig. The child gives me the pig, and I say, what is it? And the child says, pig. Again, over time, I'm going to get them to say, it's a pig. But in the beginning, I just want them to say pig. In fact, in the beginning, I just want them to utter anything. I'm going to reward the approximation, but I'm going to work on getting it pig, right? So we're working every possible way that we can. But once the child has that, now I gotta strengthen, because they could just be thinking it's a card with a picture on it, that's a pig. So now I'm gonna bring in some distractors, different things that are not a picture of a pig. I might have a picture of an ice cube, and I might have a picture of a dog. But the child does not know either one of these things right now. Okay, so by the way, this is called mass trialing. You don't need to know that. There's not going to be a test, but I'm just telling you, jargon. It's called mass trialing. That all I'm doing is asking for the pig right now. I'm not asking for the ice cube, and I'm not asking for the dog. We're only working on pig, but I've got these 2 things that are distractors. So I've got my stimuli in my hand, right? The child is sitting at the table in front of me, and I've got these 3 things. And I'm going to have, when I prep myself, I'm going to have a picture of a pig, and I might have 3 pictures of pigs so that it's not always the same pig. And I've got a stack of other things that are next to me that maybe I've got 10 or 12 other things to choose from, because I want this to be as quick as possible. Because if I'm keeping the child engaged and I got something going on, then the child's not escaping and not going someplace else. The child wants the reinforcement. I've got to get them to the place where they're being reinforced as quickly as possible. So I've got a stack of things here to choose from, but it's far enough away that the child can't get to them. So some people sit on them, some people stick them underneath their chair, but you got to have them close at hand, but where the child can't get at them. So, and I've got the 3 things in my hand, and I lay them down and I go, give me the pig. Now, what you'll see is that once the child starts to know, okay, as soon as I give the pig, I'm going to be reinforced, you'll see the child start to go for the stimuli before you even ask. All you're asking is pig, so by the 8th time you ask, they know what you want, right? So they go to pick up the pig, but you can't let them do that. So you're going to response block that, and you're going to say, wait, we're waiting. right? And let like 2 or 3 seconds go by, and then you lift up your hands and go, give me the pig, and they've got to wait until you ask for the pig. So now they give you the pig, and you go, good job. While you're reinforcing, you're scooping up the other two, and you're shuffling them, and you put them down in a different order. It really does take 2 hands, and it's something that getting used to dealing with the stimuli takes a little while. Cut yourself a break. You're not going to be perfect the first time, but you want to keep the stimuli in front of you, right? Because the child's going to be reaching for it. And at some point, children are good at swiping. I'm done with this lesson, right? And we don't want to leave room for all of that. So you've got your other stuff, whether it's on the table next to you or underneath, but it's a place where the child can't get it. And you're keeping your hands close here so that if the child goes to take the wrong one or to swipe them all, you're going to be able to response block and say, nope, give me the pig, right? And each time you're scooping up all 3, removing the field, and every once in a while, if you've got the child's attention and the child's excited because they're getting good reinforcement, you're going to put a couple of different cards in there. You're still only dealing with the 3, right? It's a lot to juggle. You will get good at it though, but cut yourself a break. You can rehearse this with somebody else before you do it with your child so that you get the motion of, this is how it's got to work, because you're also taking some data over on the other side as well. I know, it's a little like juggling. But you will get good at it. And when you watch therapists who are really good at it, it's seamless and it's wonderful, and the child stays engaged, and it's almost as if there's no pause because they're scooping things up while they're reinforcing that, they're scooping one-handed and tickling the child and going, woo, you're so smart. How did you get to be so smart? Give me the pig. And it really needs to be that quick, because otherwise the child gets bored and not interested. Okay, so we mass trial it until the child demonstrates that they really understand that this is the pig and they can pick it out of the other 2 and it's not a problem. We've switched the pig a couple of times and we've done it across a couple of sessions with different therapists, and they're really starting to understand this is a pig. Great. So do we stop there? No. We'll start to work on another animal. So maybe we do, this is, give me the dog. What is it? It's a dog, right? And when we're doing that, we're not going to put the pig card in there. We're going to pick other things to be in there when we're teaching a dog. When we get to the point where the child understands dog, then we're going to randomly rotate. And so the child knows dog and the child knows pig. So we're going to put those two things in the mix of the 3 and put a third distractor in. And we're going to randomly go back and forth. That's why they call it random rotation. So I'm going to lay out my 3 and I'm going to say, give me the pig. And the child now looks and they're like, oh, we were doing dog for a while. Okay, which one is the pig? Oh, this one is the pig. Now, sometimes they're going to get it wrong. And we really got to keep our other hands close here so that if they go to take the dog, we can gently do a response block, whether we pull our cards back or take their hand and be putting it on the pig, right? Whichever one that we want. If we said, give me the pig, and they're going for the dog, we're going to grab their hand and go, there's the pig, and then scoop them all up, put them back down and go, give me the pig, right? And then they are able to pick the pig. Great. Now we shuffle them all back. Okay, give me the dog. And the child's going to go for the pig, right? And we go, nope, give me the dog. And we help them. Oh, here's the dog. Great. Take the cards back, shuffle them. Give me the pig. And now the child's got to listen. Now they're really starting to discriminate. Oh, you're saying something and it relates to the things that are here. When you say pig, you want this one. And when you say dog, you want this one. And we're going to continue to randomly rotate, and we'll put other things in there as well, so that maybe the child, you saw that earlier with Jack Riley that she was doing categories. So once we have those labels, the pig and the dog, then we start with animals. Well, you've also been working on furniture. So they knew table and chair and all these other things. And so now we're going to start to tell them these are furniture. So you say, you put the chair out with a sponge and a fish and say, give me the one that's furniture. Yes, it's a chair. What's a chair? Furniture. Right? And it seems like it's just painstaking, but I can remember when my son went through this set of lessons and he flew through them. It went so quickly that they would introduce a new category in the morning, and by the next day he'd have mastered it and they'd start on the next category. And I remember thinking, how does this all gel together? But it did. It did gel together to the point where my son understood that a pig is an animal, and it's an animal that has a tail, and it happens to be pink, and it has a snout, and it has ears. And when he began to think of the pig as all of these different things, then he could think of it in other ways as well, and that a pig snorts, so that I could play riddles with him and say, I'm thinking of an animal that's black and white and has 4 legs, and he could start to come up with all of those animals, and it wasn't just this, I know what a picture of a zebra looks like. He had an understanding of not only what this word means, but what the thing is and how it relates to the rest of the world. That's when it gets really, really exciting. Really, really exciting. But we start with DTT, and part of it is managing your stimuli, knowing, okay, and sometimes you're going to do a field of more than 3, depending on what it is, the thing that you're learning, but you got to be really good at scooping them up and laying them back down in different orders, and not letting the child have access to and fling them. It takes a little bit of practice, but I know you can do it. Stick with us. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. I'm here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of CARD Fresno. And she's a wonderful resource, and today we're going to be talking with her about using assisted technology.
If you are a parent of a child who is primarily nonvocal and maybe has been using a type of iconic communication system, and you are recognizing that your child has really just outgrown it. You know, it is something, they need something faster, they need something better. There's so much more that we can do in the world of augmentative devices. I am a huge fan of using augmentative device programs on cell phones and also on iPads. As you and I were chatting, we had just downloaded a really simple tap to talk program. So for this one, all a child would need to be able to do is just tap on what they wanted.
I want a drink.
And then that immediately pulls up a screen where there's water, juice, milk, soda, and smoothie. So maybe the child just wanted a drink of their water.
Water, please.
And it's that simple. And there's not a lot to manipulate. The child does not have to have really advanced motor skills at all.
We're seeing more and more organizations advocating getting an iPad because of all those features. But it's not just for kids who are non-vocal.
We have a lot of kids, you know, who have significant impairment in their sensory regulation. They really are seeking visual input, auditory input, tactile input. And if they're learning to appropriately play with a cell phone or with an iPad or with a computer, it provides those levels of appropriate sensory stimulation. So you're getting appropriate sensory, hopefully leading to a decrease in some of those repetitive behaviors, and you're teaching age-appropriate play skills. You know, they have free apps even if you're working on verb use, and the child can actually scroll through the different pictures and practice talking and narrating what they see in the pictures. There's just a lot of wonderful things that you can get from devices nowadays. You know, whether we're looking at language, social, play.
For my son, it's quite the social thing. When he sees somebody else who has one, he gravitates to them and they start playing together. It really starts the conversation with the other child.
What games do you have? What apps do you have? Can I play that one? Can I see it?
Yeah. And a lot of the apps are super inexpensive or free.
Or free.
which is you can't be free. Free is good.
So I mean, you might have that initial investment in actually purchasing an appropriate device, but then a lot of the software or things that you need, are free or relatively inexpensive. There are also some really nice applications that might be a little bit more expensive, maybe like $20 or $30, where you can essentially download the entire, for example, PEX icon library for just that little initial, investment.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We've talked about a wide variety of stuff today. Of course, we're only scratching the surface of all the things that we can and want to talk about, but that's why we're here for 3 hours live every day. I promised you that we would talk a little bit about funding because it's part of the stress that we go through on a regular basis, excuse me, as parents. And there are so many different ways to look at the funding situation, but I wanted to take just a second to talk to you about insurance today. And that is a really interesting place to be. When for so long, no insurance covered it. There just was no insurance that would cover it. That's not the case today. But what it does is it leaves a situation in which most of us, including myself, don't know what we're entitled to today and what day that's going to change and what we're going to be entitled to on that day when it changes. Some of you already have insurance reform in place, and you may or may not be covered by it. Others of you don't have insurance reform in place, and yet you are still eligible for your insurance to pay for it if you ask the right person the right question. So I think it's really good to step back every once in a while and talk about strategies of how you can figure out where you are right now in time. And one of the places that I like to recommend on a regular basis, there's a wonderful website called autismvotes.org. You can go there and you'll see a map, and it gives you a representation. And I think it's both com and org, by the way. It gives you a map that's a wonderful representation of this moment in time in the United States, who has insurance reform and who doesn't. Now, that's a great thing. It's a great place to start, because if you see that you have insurance reform in your state, then you know which questions to be asking. You should be asking, what day does it take effect, or what day did it take effect? What are the restrictions? What are the age ranges? What are the medical caps? And all of those things you can find them on Autism Votes. Now, take that all with a little bit of a grain of salt, because there have been some federal mandates that have been passed about insurance in general. There's the Medical Health Parity Act that's been passed. And what that says is that if a state is let's say that there is coverage that they have set out as the state requirement for any kind of a mental issue. Let's say that a child is in a car accident and has some difficulties as a result of the car accident. If the state allows for, let's say, $60,000 a year for that child, then the federal law will state that they have to provide that same service to a child on the autism spectrum. So you might have a $30,000 cap in your state, but upon further research, you discover that there's a $60,000 cap for something that is covered in the Mental Health Parity Act, and so you're actually eligible for $60,000. So it's a little confusing. It's a lot confusing. Who are we kidding here? But that's why I say take it all with a grain of salt. At least you'll know where you're starting. You're also going to see that even if you have insurance reform in your state, it doesn't absolutely cover absolutely everyone. Certainly that is the case in my state. But at least you'll have a place to begin. Then if you see that it is covered in your state, you can call your insurance provider. And here is where it gets a little bit dicey. And in fact, when we have Bryce Myler come in, she says, don't even deal with the insurance company to start with. Go to your HR person who deals with insurance benefits and be very nice, but be very insistent. I need for you to research this and find out, because here's what the law says. So if I don't qualify for it, I want you to show me where, based on the law, do I not? Are we, privately funded? What is the reason that I don't? And really make friends with the HR director so that they, or the person who in HR who deals with benefits, so that you have the person to go to. If they just call the insurance company to begin with, know that the first line of defense in the insurance company are people who are not educated about what the current laws are. They don't have time to be. They've been trained to be on the phone to answer immediate questions and shuffle people to other places. So it's one of those things that you got to keep follow up on and keep following up on, right? But even if you are in a state that does not have insurance reform, it's possible that your insurance provider has signed a contract and is agreeing to pay for autism treatments such as ABA, even though they don't have to in that state. So don't take a no as an absolute. If you don't have insurance reform right now, it's coming sooner or later. And it will come sooner the more people who are calling and asking, well, I don't have it. Why don't I have it? Show me why I don't have it, because, my friend down the street has it. So not only will you be doing a service to your child and helping your child in this moment, because you might get a yes. More and more people are getting yeses. It is covered. And then you're going to want to know how much, when, how do I have to go about this? What do I have to have? Because in a lot of cases, you have to have a diagnosis. It makes it different, right? But good to know and good to go and get the diagnosis right now and get qualified for those benefits right now before the diagnosis criteria changes, right? We're working on a window here. We know that the DSM is going to change in 2013. So if you are covered by insurance, now is a really good time to make sure that you have your diagnosis up to speed, shall we say. Okay, so start with insurance and make absolutely sure that you are covered or aren't covered. And don't let up until somebody can say to you, yes, you're absolutely covered and here is what it covers. Or they say to you, no, you're absolutely not covered and here is the exclusion within the law that says why you aren't covered. And follow it to the end, because if you can get insurance in place, it is going to help you immensely. It will take some time. It will take some patience. But once you've gone through that process, you're not going to have to keep going through it over and over and over again. If you find that you absolutely are not covered by insurance, there's no way, no how. There are other things that we can talk about so that you can get funding in other ways, and we'll share those on another day. But let's all start and educate ourselves in terms of insurance. Is your insurance going to cover it? If it's not, why? What's the exclusion that is preventing you from getting the insurance covered? Okay, we're pretty much here at the end of the show, so there are a couple of things that I want to be sharing with you for this week. Of course, on Wednesday, we always have Evelyn Gould, who's a fabulous board-certified behavior analyst, who comes in at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays to share with us parent tips. And what I love about Evelyn is that she doesn't just give us the dry ABA, this is how you do it. She says, this is how you do it, and here's what you have to keep in mind. And as a parent, here's what you're working against in terms of your day. And here's how you can tackle that on this day, and on this day you may choose not to tackle that because you're not going to be able to get it done on this day. It's very nuts and bolts and kind to parents, and I think realistic in terms of what's possible. So Evelyn Gould, 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. At 11 o'clock on Wednesdays, we do a wonderful segment called Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and during that hour, I'm joined by my fabulous co-host co-host, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. She is the executive director of Act Today, a wonderful organization a nonprofit that raises money and gives it out to families in grants for the things that they need. So right now, you have the ability to ask for a grant from Act Today. You can visit their website. It's act-today.org. You can go, and it's an open grant period right now. You fill out the papers. It is extensive paperwork because they give away a lot of money. And I believe they've given away over $250,000 to families for the things that they need. So Nancy is one awesome autism warrior mom, and she's with us here on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And this week, I know we're going to be featuring some different apps that are great for autism. This is something we're going to be talking more and more about. As technology increases, we're seeing that there's our kids are reinforced by these devices. They want to sit and play the games, and if we can make that a learning moment for them, why not? So we've got somebody coming in that's going to be talking about some very specific apps on Wednesday and some other events. And we always cover the news on Wednesdays when we're here with Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. Okay, and on Fridays, we have the wonderful Dr. Jonathan Tarbox come in and talk about research. That's at 11 o'clock on Fridays. And in between, we have some really wonderful guests that we're going to be sharing with you. So lots to talk about. And as this show ends, until we start again, I want you to know that the conversation continues throughout the day and throughout the night. There are so many ways that you have to get in touch with us, and so I want to go over some of those ways. Of course, if you're watching us live, type your question in live, but as many of you can't watch us live, we appreciate all of your emails. Send us an email, a question, a suggestion, a comment, complain. Our shoulders are broad. Tell us what we're doing wrong, because we want to be here to help you. And if we're not getting that done, we really need to know what we need to do better. Okay, so email, you can do that. If you're interested in calling us, you can call us 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, Pacific Standard Time. If you call during the time that we're on the show, you can even Skype in on the show. We love to get Skype phone calls, but you can call. If somebody's not here, you can leave a message and somebody will get back to you as soon as business hours start up again. You can talk to us on Facebook. You can tweet us. There are so many different ways to get in touch with us. And by the way, while we're talking about the ways that you can get in touch with us, there are many more ways to watch us. If you're watching us live and you're thinking, oh man, I want to see that segment again, I need to rewind and go back over that for whatever reason, you can watch us on Blip. And you can also find us now on iTunes. It's a free download. There's no cost associated with any of this. We want to be here to support you and not to be another problem on your list of things to do, but to be one of the things in your plus column. So I hope that you will take advantage of what we have, the opportunities that we have here. Mondays is just me, but the rest of the week we have guests and experts Skyping in and coming into the studio to be with you. We know that it's important for you to have access to those people. And so if there's somebody in particular that you want me to be interviewing, please let me know who it is that you want to talk to, and we will set about getting them here in the studio or Skyping in with us. And by the way, if you're watching and you have a story that you would like to tell, we want to hear from you about that as well. We've started featuring bloggers, mommy and daddy bloggers on the show. And if you're thinking, well, I want to be on the show, then send me an email. Send me an email. We want those suggestions, or if there's a parent that you know that you think, oh, they would be a great guest on the show, then by all means, write in. In my first 2 years on this journey, I couldn't get to a conference. I didn't get to meet people. I didn't get to hear people speak, and I felt so left out. Nobody needs to feel left out anymore because everybody can Skype in. Okay. Also want to let you know that we have been working on making a mural of your children's artwork, so we're still looking for artwork. Send it to us at our snail mail address, or you can scan it and email it to us. But we are creating a wall, and sometime soon soon we're going to show you the wall. So your child's artwork should be on there. I want you to know how much it means to me to be able to be here with you. When we started on the journey, I said, I want to do everything that I can to help my child, and then I want to be able to try to help as many people as I possibly can. Well, somebody was listening and took me at my word, and that's what I'm here for. So please take advantage of everything that we have to offer here, and let us know if there's some need that you have that we're not fulfilling, because that is our whole mantra here, to be able to help you, to support you, to hold your hand, to tell you you can do this. You will survive this, and you're just going to become a better parent, learning the ABA techniques, and your child will be happier for it. I will be back with you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.